Hello there, and welcome back. Tonight, we are going to explore something your mind has always known, but perhaps never thought about. The gentle, ancient power of repetition. Not the kind that feels tedious, not the kind that feels mechanical, but the kind that feels like home. The steady rhythm of rain against a window, the soft ticking of a clock in a quiet room, the predictable, faithful beating of a heart that has kept time since before you were born. If you are new here, this is a place for curious minds who like to learn while they drift towards sleep. There is nothing you need to remember tonight. Nothing you need to do. If you would like to leave a like or subscribe, it helps other sleepy souls find their way here too. One tired mind at a time, but only if you feel like it. Now, settle in. Let your shoulders release whatever they have been carrying. Let your jaw soften, and let the rhythm of these quiet words carry you gently, wherever you need to go. Because tonight, you might discover something beautiful. Your brain is not restless because it craves excitement. It is restless because it is searching. Searching for a pattern it can trust. And when it finds one gentle, steady, predictable, it finally stops looking. And it begins to rest. So let us begin with the rhythms that live inside you. Your heart beats approximately 100,000 times every single day. That is a rhythm so steady, so faithful, that most people never even notice it. Your heart does not wait for instructions. It does not need reminding. It simply beats. Again and again. A soft, persistent drum in the center of your chest. A study published in the journal Circulation found that the average resting heart rate creates a rhythm of about 60 to 100 beats per minute. Researchers at the HeartMath Institute discovered that this rhythm is not random. It follows complex patterns that respond to your emotions, your breathing, and even the thoughts drifting through your mind. Imagine a tide pool, hidden among rocks near the sea. The water rises and falls with each passing wave, never rushing, never still, simply following a rhythm older than memory. Your heart is like that tide pool. It rises and falls, not because anyone asks it to, but because that is what it was made to do. Perhaps you might notice the feeling of your own heartbeat right now, maybe in your chest, maybe in your fingertips. You do not need to search for it. Just allow yourself to notice if it finds you. And with each quiet beat, your body whispers the same message it has whispered since the beginning. You are here. You are alive. And the rhythm continues. Before you were born, the very first sound you ever heard was your mother's heartbeat. In the warm darkness of the womb, there were no words, no music, no birdsong. There was only rhythm, the steady, muffled thrum of a heart beating just above you, somewhere between 60 and 80 beats per minute. A tempo remarkably close to a lullaby. Researchers at the University of Helsinki published findings in 2013 showing that prenatal sound exposure shapes the developing brain. The fetus begins to process auditory patterns as early as 27 weeks. And of all the sounds that reach through the uterine wall, voices, music, the hum of the outside world, the heartbeat, is the most constant, the most rhythmic, the most deeply felt. Think of it like the first song you ever knew. A melody written not in notes, but in pulses. a song so ancient it predates language, predates thought, predates everything you have ever known. And somewhere deep inside your nervous system, that melody still plays. Perhaps you might notice the gentle weight of your body pressing into whatever surface supports you right now. You do not need to adjust anything. Simply notice how the earth holds you, steady and sure. And in that steadiness, something old and familiar stirs. A rhythm you have known longer than your own name. Your brain produces electrical waves that follow beautifully predictable patterns. Right now, as you listen to these words, billions of neurons are firing in your brain, but they are not firing randomly. They are firing together, in waves, rising and falling like the surface of a quiet ocean. Scientists call these brainwaves, and they come in several distinct frequencies, each one linked to a different state of mind. Neuroscientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have mapped these waves extensively. Beta waves, the fastest, appear when you are alert and focused. Alpha waves emerge when you begin to relax. Theta waves arise during light sleep and daydreaming, and delta waves the slowest. Deepest waves appear during the most restorative stages of sleep. Imagine a forest at different times of day. In the morning, the birds call brightly, and the leaves rustle with energy. By afternoon, the sounds soften. By evening, only the gentlest whispers of wind remain. And at midnight, the forest is almost perfectly still. Your brain moves through frequencies the same way a forest moves through the hours. Naturally, effortlessly, one rhythm giving way to the next. Perhaps you might notice the muscles around your eyes. If there is any tightness there, you might allow them to soften just a little. There is nothing to watch, nothing to search for. And as those tiny muscles release, your brain may already be beginning its own quiet descent. From one wave to the next, each one slower, deeper, and more peaceful than the last. When you close your eyes, your brain immediately begins to shift from beta waves to alpha waves. This transition is one of the most reliable patterns in neuroscience. The moment your eyelids close, the visual cortex, which normally processes an enormous amount of information, suddenly has far less to do. And in that quiet, alpha waves begin to bloom across the back of your brain like ripples spreading across still water. Researchers at the University of Adelaide confirmed that this shift happens within seconds. Alpha waves oscillate at 8 to 12 cycles per second, a frequency that neuroscientists associate with calm alertness, the state just before drowsiness. The brain does not need to be told to do this. It simply responds to the absence of visual input by slowing down. Imagine closing the shutters of a small cottage by the sea. The light softens. The sounds outside become muffled. And inside, everything grows a little more still. That is what your brain does each time you close your eyes. It closes the shutters, dims the lights, and prepares for quiet. Perhaps you might allow your eyelids to rest a little heavier now, not forcing anything, just allowing. And in that gentle darkness, your brain has already begun its familiar work. Shifting, slowing, settling, like a river widening as it nears the sea. Your body temperature follows a graceful 24-hour cycle that helps you fall asleep. Every evening, as the sun sets and darkness deepens. Your core body temperature begins to drop. It falls by about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the course of the night, reaching its lowest point in the early hours before dawn. This is not random. This is your body's circadian rhythm, an internal clock that has been ticking since the day you were born. Research published in the journal Sleep by Dr. Kurt Kreutzky in 2007 demonstrated that this temperature decline is one of the strongest biological signals for sleep onset. As your core cools, blood flows to your hands and feet, warming them, a process called distal vasodilation, which paradoxically helps the rest of your body release heat and cool down. Think of the Earth itself, slowly rotating away from the sun. As evening settles, the ground releases the warmth it has gathered throughout the day. Quietly, gradually, without effort, your body does the same thing each night, releasing the heat of the day, settling into cool, dark stillness. Perhaps you might notice whether your hands feel warm right now. If they do, that may be your body's way of beginning this ancient cooling process, preparing you, gently, for rest. And as the warmth drifts outward through your fingertips, something inside you may already be cooling, quieting, finding its way towards sleep. Every cell in your body operates on its own internal clock. It is not just your brain that keeps time. Every cell in your liver, your kidneys, your skin, your bones contains its own molecular clock, ticking quietly in the background. These are called peripheral clocks, and they synchronize with the master clock in your brain to create a symphony of biological rhythms. In 2017, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for discovering the molecular mechanisms that control circadian rhythms. They found that special proteins accumulate inside cells throughout the day and are broken down at night, creating a feedback loop that repeats every 24 hours. A tiny, invisible pendulum swinging inside every living cell. Imagine a meadow full of fireflies at dusk. At first, each one blinks independently, but slowly, without any signal or instruction, they begin to synchronize, flickering together in a shared, silent rhythm. Your cells do the same thing. Trillions of tiny clocks, all gently beating in time. Perhaps you might notice the rise and fall of your own breathing, not changing it, simply watching. Each inhale, a small wave rising. Each exhale, a small wave returning. And as you breathe, those trillions of tiny clocks continue their quiet work, keeping time in the darkness, keeping you whole while you rest. Your blood pressure rises and falls in a gentle daily rhythm that mirrors the sun. In the hours before dawn, your blood pressure begins to climb, preparing your body for the day ahead. It peaks in the late morning, dips gently in the early afternoon, and begins its slow descent as evening approaches. By the time you are lying in bed, your blood pressure is near its lowest point. Your body's way of saying, the day is done. Researchers at the University of Padua published in the journal Hypertension that this circadian pattern is so reliable it can be used as a diagnostic tool. The morning surge, the afternoon dip, the evening decline. These are not random fluctuations. They are the rhythm of a body that knows the difference between day and night, activity and rest. Think of the tide in a sheltered harbor. It rises with the morning light, fills the pools among the rocks, and then gently recedes as the sun crosses the sky. Your blood pressure follows this same patient arc, rising, cresting, and falling again, as reliable as the tide itself. Perhaps you might notice the feeling of your hands resting wherever they are right now, the gentle pulse in your wrists, the quiet hum of blood moving through you. And in that pulse, the tide continues. Steady, familiar, old as the sea. The neurons in your brain synchronize their firing patterns when you begin to relax. When you are awake and alert, different regions of your brain fire at different times, each one busy with its own task. But as you begin to relax, something remarkable happens. The neurons begin to synchronize. They start firing together, in rhythm, like musicians in an orchestra finding the same tempo. A study published in the journal Nature Neuroscience found that neural synchronization increases significantly during the transition from wakefulness to sleep. This synchronization is thought to help the brain consolidate memories and repair itself. When neurons fire together, they create stronger, more efficient connections. A process neuroscientists sometimes describe as neurons that fire together, wire together. Imagine a murmuration of starlings at dusk, thousands of birds, each one moving independently, yet somehow creating a single, flowing shape against the darkening sky. No leader, no plan, just a shared rhythm that emerges naturally from the group. Your neurons do this too. Thousands of them, finding each other in the fading light of consciousness. Perhaps you might notice the muscles of your forehead, if there is any tension there. Perhaps a subtle furrow you did not realize you were holding. You might allow it to soften, and as it does, the murmuration inside your mind may grow quieter. The birds settling, one by one, into the branches of sleep. Your breathing rate naturally slows when your body feels safe. This is one of the most ancient rhythms in your body. When there is danger, your breath quickens. When there is safety, it slows. This is not something you decide. It is something your autonomic nervous system does for you, reading the environment and adjusting your breathing accordingly. Research from Stanford University, published in 2017 in the journal Science, identified a tiny cluster of neurons in the brainstem called the pre-Boettinger complex. These neurons act as the brain's breathing pacemaker, generating the rhythm of each breath, and they are directly connected to the brain's arousal centers, which means the pace of your breathing literally shapes how alert or calm you feel. Think of a candle flame in a room with no wind. It barely flickers. It simply glows. Steady, quiet, undisturbed. When your body feels safe, your breath becomes like that candle. Small, gentle, barely moving, not because you are trying, but because there is nothing to flee from. Perhaps you might notice the rhythm of your own breath right now, not deepening it, not slowing it, just noticing how it rises, pose, and falls. Rise, pose, and falls. And in that quiet rhythm, your body is already whispering what it has always known. You are safe. You can rest now. The vagus nerve creates a constant, calming rhythm between your brain and your body. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body. It wanders from your brainstem all the way down through your chest and abdomen, touching nearly every major organ along the way. And it carries a rhythm, a steady stream of signals that tells your heart to slow, your digestion to activate, and your muscles to release their tension. Dr. Stephen Porges, who developed the polyvagal theory, describes the vagus nerve as the body's social engagement system. When vagal tone is high, meaning the nerve is functioning well, your heart rate becomes more variable. Your breathing deepens, and your body shifts into a state of calm. Researchers have found that vagal tone can be improved through slow breathing, gentle humming, and even the simple act of being near someone you trust. Imagine a river running through a valley. It touches every field, every grove, every quiet meadow along its path, and everywhere it passes. Things grow a little greener, a little softer, a little more alive. The vagus nerve is like that river, flowing through you, nourishing calm wherever it goes. Perhaps you might notice the area around your throat and chest. If there is any tightness there, you might imagine it softening, opening, like a flower that has been waiting for morning. And as it opens, the river flows a little more freely, carrying its gentle rhythm deeper into the stillness of your body. Sleep spindles are brief, rhythmic bursts of brain activity that help protect your sleep. During stage 2 sleep, your brain produces short, rapid oscillations called sleep spindles. They last only 1 to 2 seconds each, but they occur again and again throughout the night, repeating in a predictable rhythm. These spindles are generated by the thalamus, a small, central structure that acts as the brain's relay station. Research published by Dr. Thien Thanh Dang Vu at Concordia University found that people who produce more sleep spindles are better able to sleep through noise and disturbances. The spindles act as a shield, blocking external sounds from reaching the cortex and waking you up. They repeat, over and over, like a gentle pulse of protection. Think of a lighthouse beam sweeping across a dark harbor. Each flash is brief, but it comes again and again, steady and reliable, keeping the ship safe through the night. Your sleep spindles are like that beam, brief bursts of light in the darkness of sleep, keeping you safe from the sounds that might pull you back to waking. Perhaps you might notice the weight of your body settling a little deeper into the surface beneath you, not sinking, just resting, letting gravity do what gravity does. And somewhere deep inside your sleeping brain, the spindles are already beginning their quiet work, pulsing, repeating, standing guard while you drift. Your digestive system follows its own rhythmic contractions called peristalsis. Even while you sleep, your digestive system continues to move in gentle, wave-like contractions. This rhythmic squeezing, called peristalsis, pushes food slowly through your intestines at a pace of about 1 to 2 centimeters per second. It is an automatic process, controlled by its own dedicated nervous system, the enteric nervous system, which contains over 500 million neurons. Scientists sometimes call the enteric nervous system the second brain, because it operates independently of the brain in your head. Research published in the journal Gastroenterology found that these rhythmic contractions follow ultradian cycles, meaning they repeat in patterns throughout the day and night. During sleep, peristalsis slows but never stops. a gentle, persistent rhythm running quietly beneath your awareness. Imagine a river winding slowly through a dark forest. You cannot see it, you cannot hear it, but it is there, moving steadily, carrying what needs to be carried, flowing onward through the night. Your body has rivers like this: quiet, rhythmic, tireless. Perhaps you might notice the area of your belly, not holding it in, not pushing it out, just allowing it to be soft, to rise and fall with each breath. And beneath that softness, the river flows on. Rhythmic, ancient, certain, carrying you gently through the hours of night. Theta waves appear when your mind begins to wander toward the edge of sleep. Theta waves oscillate at 4 to 8 cycles per second, slower than alpha waves, but faster than the deep delta waves of full sleep. They emerge during that delicate threshold between waking and sleeping, a state scientists call the hypnagogic phase. In this space, thoughts become fluid. Images drift without logic, and the boundary between imagination and reality grows soft. Researchers at Harvard Medical School found that theta activity increases dramatically in the minutes before sleep onset. These waves are also associated with creativity, intuition, and the kind of loose, associative thinking that comes when you are no longer trying to think at all. The brain is not shutting down during theta. It is letting go, releasing the tight grip of focused attention and allowing the mind to float. Imagine standing at the edge of a lake at twilight. The water is perfectly still, and the sky above is reflected so clearly that you cannot tell where the air ends and the water begins. Theta is that twilight lake, a place where the boundary between waking thought and sleeping dream dissolves into something soft and borderless. Perhaps you might notice whether your thoughts have begun to drift a little. If they have, that is perfectly fine. You do not need to bring them back. Let them wander. And as they wander, the lake grows quieter. The light grows softer. And the shore of sleep draws just a little bit closer. Your pupils dilate and constrict in a gentle, rhythmic pattern, even in constant light. Even in a room where the light does not change, your pupils are never truly still. They expand and contract in tiny, rhythmic oscillations called hippus. This subtle, involuntary movement has fascinated researchers for over a century, and its precise purpose is still not fully understood. A study at the University of Arizona found that these pupillary oscillations become slower and more pronounced as a person becomes drowsy. The rhythm of hippus appears to be linked to fluctuations in the autonomic nervous system, the same system that controls your heart rate, your breathing, and your level of arousal. As you grow sleepy, the oscillations widen and deepen, like a pendulum swinging more slowly as it runs down. Imagine a small pool of water in a cave, lit by a single shaft of light. The surface trembles gently, not from wind, but from the quiet vibrations of the earth itself. Your pupils are like that pool, always moving, always responding to rhythms too subtle to see. Perhaps you might allow your eyes to feel heavy beneath their lids, not trying to keep them open, not trying to close them, just letting them be. And behind those softly closed lids, the tiny rhythmic dance continues. A pulse no one sees, a pattern no one notices, a rhythm as old as sight itself. Heart rate variability is a sign of a healthy, flexible nervous system. Heart rate variability, or HRV, is the slight variation in the time between each heartbeat. A healthy heart does not beat like a metronome. It speeds up slightly when you inhale and slows slightly when you exhale. This subtle, rhythmic variation is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it is a sign that your autonomic nervous system is working beautifully. Research published in the journal Psychophysiology found that higher heart rate variability is associated with greater emotional resilience, better sleep quality, and lower levels of stress. People with high HRV tend to fall asleep more easily and sleep more deeply. The variation is not a flaw in the system. It is the system working exactly as it should. Imagine a skilled musician playing a melody. The tempo is steady, but not rigid. There are tiny, expressive variations, a note held just a moment longer, a pause that breathes, that give the music its warmth and beauty. Your heart plays this way. Not perfectly regular, but perfectly alive. Perhaps you might notice the space between each of your breaths, the brief, quiet pause after each exhale, before the next inhale begins on its own. That pause is where the variation lives. And in that variation, your body is singing a song it has always known. A melody of rest, of flexibility, of gentle, living rhythm. Your brain has a cleaning system that pulses gently while you sleep. In 2012, researchers at the University of Rochester discovered something remarkable. During sleep, the spaces between brain cells widen by about 60%, and cerebrospinal fluid pulses through these expanded channels, flushing out metabolic waste. They named this system the glymphatic system. Dr. Maiken Nedergaard, who led the research, described it as a dishwasher for the brain, a cleaning cycle that runs on its own schedule, repeating its gentle rhythms throughout the night. The pulsing follows a rhythmic pattern, driven in part by slow breathing and reduced heart rate during sleep. Imagine a forest stream after rain. The water flows gently between the mossy stones, carrying away fallen leaves and tiny particles of silt, leaving the streambed clean and clear. While you sleep, your brain has its own stream. Quiet, rhythmic, purifying. Perhaps you might imagine that gentle flow now, moving softly through the spaces of your mind, not rushing, not forcing, just flowing, clearing away whatever the day has left behind. And as it flows, each pulse carries something away. A worry, a thought, a remnant of the day, leaving behind only quiet, clean stillness. Delta waves are the slowest brain waves, and they carry you into the deepest stages of sleep. Delta waves oscillate at just half a cycle to 4 cycles per second. They are the slowest, largest, and most powerful brain waves your brain can produce. When delta waves dominate your brain activity, you are in stage 3, sleep deep, restorative, dreamless sleep, the kind from which it is hardest to wake. Research from the University of Wisconsin found that delta wave activity is directly correlated with sleep quality. The more delta waves your brain produces, the more restorative your sleep tends to be. These waves are most abundant in the first few hours of the night, which is why the early hours of sleep are often the deepest. Imagine the bottom of the ocean, far below the surface, far below the currents and the light. There is a place of absolute stillness, Nothing moves. Nothing changes. The water is dark and heavy and utterly, completely at peace. Delta sleep is like that ocean floor, the deepest place your mind can go. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of heaviness in your limbs, your arms, your legs, as if they have become part of the surface beneath you. Heavy, warm, and perfectly still. And somewhere beneath all thought, the deep waves are already gathering. Slow, vast, patient, waiting to carry you down to the quietest place you know. Your body releases melatonin in a predictable rhythm each evening as darkness falls. As the light fades and your eyes register the coming darkness, a tiny gland at the center of your brain, the pineal gland, begins to secrete melatonin. This hormone does not make you sleep directly. Instead, it signals to your body that night has arrived, lowering your core temperature, slowing your metabolism, and preparing every system for rest. Research published in the Journal of Biological Rhythms found that melatonin secretion follows a remarkably consistent pattern. It begins to rise about 2 hours before your natural bedtime, peaks in the middle of the night, and gradually falls as dawn approaches. This rhythm is so reliable that scientists use it as a marker for the body's internal clock. Think of a garden at dusk. As the last light drains from the sky, the flowers begin to close their petals one by one, softly, without hurry, not because they are tired, but because the dark has gently told them it is time. Your body does the same thing each evening, closing its petals, folding inward, following a rhythm written in the chemistry of light and dark. Perhaps you might notice the quality of the darkness behind your eyelids. Not empty, not frightening, just soft, a darkness that holds you, rather than hides from you. And in that softness, the melatonin is already at work. Quiet as moonrise, steady as the turning of the earth, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is a tiny cluster of neurons that serves as your brain's master clock. Deep within your hypothalamus, just above the point where your optic nerves cross, sits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a structure no larger than a grain of rice that controls nearly every rhythmic process in your body. It sets the tempo for when you feel awake, when you feel drowsy, when your hormones surge, and when they recede. Neuroscientists at Vanderbilt University discovered that even when isolated from the rest of the brain, the SCN continues to oscillate on a 24-hour cycle. It receives light information directly from your retinas and uses this information to synchronize your internal clock with the external world. It is, in essence, the conductor of every biological rhythm you possess. Imagine a lighthouse keeper sitting alone in a small room at the top of a tower. Every day, at the same time, the keeper turns the light on. Every night, at the same time, the keeper turns it off. The keeper does not ask why. The keeper simply keeps time. Your SCN is that lighthouse keeper. Small, solitary, faithful, turning the rhythms of your body on and off with quiet, tireless precision. Perhaps you might notice the feeling of time itself slowing down, not the clock on the wall, but the time inside you. The felt sense of moments stretching, softening, becoming less urgent. And in that soft stretching, the tiny keeper continues its work, ticking gently in the dark, keeping time while you forget to. Your muscles relax in gentle waves as you approach the threshold of sleep. As you drift towards sleep, your muscles do not relax all at once. They release in stages, in a pattern that moves through your body like a slow, quiet wave. First, the large muscles of your legs and arms begin to soften. Then the smaller muscles of your hands and feet. Then the muscles of your face, your jaw, your brow. The tiny muscles around your eyes. Research from the journal Sleep Medicine Reviews describes this process as a progressive decline in muscle tone that closely mirrors the transition from wakefulness to stage 1 sleep. The release is controlled by the brainstem, which gradually reduces the signals that keep your muscles tense and ready. As each group lets go, the next one follows. Like dominoes falling in slow motion. Imagine snow settling over a landscape at night. It covers the hills first, then the fields, then the fence posts, then the smallest blades of grass. Slowly, silently, until everything is draped in white stillness. Your body relaxes the same way. One layer at a time, one quiet surrender after another. Perhaps you might notice whether there is any remaining tension in your body right now. Your hands, perhaps, or your feet. You do not need to do anything about it. Just notice. And perhaps allow. And as each tiny pocket of tension melts away, the snow continues to fall, covering everything in softness, leaving only stillness behind. You blink in a semi-regular rhythm that you almost never notice. The average person blinks about 15 to 20 times per minute, roughly once every 3 to 4 seconds. This rhythm is so automatic, so deeply embedded in your neural circuitry, that you are almost never aware of it. And yet it has continued without pause since the first moment you opened your eyes. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that blinks are not random. They tend to cluster at natural pause points, the end of a sentence, the end of a scene. The moment between one thought and the next. Your brain times your blinks to minimize disruption, slipping them into the gaps between moments of attention. Think of the gentle closing and opening of a music box lid. Open. A melody plays. Closed. A moment of silence. Open again. Your eyelids do the same thing. Opening and closing in a rhythm you never chose, never learned, and never think about. And yet it continues, faithful and precise. Perhaps you might notice that your blink rate has already slowed. When the eyes grow tired, the rhythm stretches. The blinks come further apart. And soon, the lids may decide to simply stay closed. And when they do, the rhythm does not end. It simply changes. From blinking to stillness. From waking to sleep. Your brain consolidates memories in repeating cycles throughout the night. Sleep is not passive. It is an active process of organization. And one of its most important tasks is the consolidation of memories. During sleep, your brain replays the experiences of the day, neural patterns firing in the same sequence they fired during waking hours, but compressed, sped up, and repeated again and again. Research from the University of Chicago found that these memory replays occur primarily during slow-wave sleep and REM sleep. Cycling between the two in repeating 90-minute patterns, each cycle reinforces the connections between neurons, strengthening the memories that matter and allowing the rest to fade. By morning, the important things have been woven more deeply into the fabric of your mind. Imagine a weaver working through the night by lamplight. Each thread is passed through the loom, then again, building layer upon layer of pattern and texture. By dawn, the cloth is stronger, more beautiful, more complete. Your sleeping brain is that weaver, while patiently repeating its patterns, strengthening the threads of your experience. Perhaps you might allow yourself to stop holding on to the events of today. Whatever happened, whatever was said or done or left undone, your brain will take care of it. It will replay what needs replaying. It will weave what needs weaving. And all you need to do is rest. Slow oscillations in deep sleep repeat at a rhythm of about once per second. During the deepest stages of sleep, your brain produces a pattern called slow oscillations, large, sweeping waves of neural activity that cycle at approximately 0.5 to 1 Hz. These oscillations are the signature rhythm of deep sleep, and they coordinate the activity of neurons across vast regions of the brain. Dr. Giulio Tononi at the University of Wisconsin found that slow oscillations are essential for the restorative functions of sleep. During each oscillation, neurons alternate between a brief period of activity, an up state, and a period of silence, a down state. This rhythmic switching is thought to help the brain recalibrate its connections, strengthening important pathways and pruning unnecessary ones. Imagine the slow, steady breathing of the earth itself. A rise, a pause, a fall, a pause, over and over. As patient as geology, your brain, in its deepest sleep, breathes the same way, rising and falling in a rhythm so slow, so vast, that it feels less like thinking and more like being. Perhaps you might allow your own breathing to find a similar slowness, not forcing it, just letting each breath stretch a little longer, each pause grow a little deeper, and in that deep, slow rhythm, you are touching the same stillness your brain was made for. A rhythm older than thought, deeper than dreams. Your body follows ultradian rhythms that cycle approximately every 90 minutes, while circadian rhythms follow a 24-hour cycle. Your body also follows shorter cycles, called ultradian rhythms. These 90-minute patterns govern your sleep stages, your attention span, and even your appetite throughout the day. During sleep, each 90-minute cycle carries you through a complete sequence of light sleep, deep sleep, and REM, sleep before beginning again. Sleep researcher Nathaniel Kleitman, often called the father of modern sleep research, first described these 90-minute cycles in the 1950s. He called them the basic rest activity cycle. Even during waking hours, your energy, focus, and alertness rise and fall in roughly 90-minute waves. A rhythm most people never notice because they push through it with caffeine and willpower. Think of the tides in a bay that sees not one tide per day, but many small ones. Gentle surges that come and go, each one a miniature version of the great ocean tides. Your body has tides like these. Small, regular, persistent, rising and falling throughout the day and night. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of heaviness or lightness in your body right now. Whatever you feel, it is simply the current position of your tide. one of many gentle cycles that will continue all through the night. And wherever the tide carries you now, it will bring you back. It always does. That is what rhythms do. The rhythm of your heartbeat can synchronize with the heartbeat of someone sitting close to you. In 2017, researchers at the University of California, Davis, discovered something extraordinary. When two people sit close together, a parent and child, two romantic partners, two close friends, their heart rates can begin to synchronize. Without speaking, without touching, simply by being in each other's presence. The study, published in the journal Scientific Reports, found that this synchronization is strongest between people who share emotional bonds. The closer the relationship, the more tightly the heartbeats align. Something in our nervous systems reaches out, unconsciously, and finds the rhythm of the person beside us, adjusting our own tempo to match. Imagine two clocks hanging on the same wall. Over time, the vibrations traveling through the wall cause their pendulums to swing in unison. No one touches them. No one adjusts them. They simply find each other through the medium that connects them. Your heart does this too. Reaching through the invisible space between you and the people you love, finding their rhythm, matching it, resting in it. Perhaps you might think of someone you care about. Not a complicated thought, just a quiet awareness of their existence somewhere in the world. Perhaps they are sleeping too. And in the stillness of this moment, your heart continues its ancient rhythm. And somewhere, perhaps, another heart is beating in time with yours. A gentle, invisible duet played softly in the dark. Lullabies exist in every human culture ever studied. No matter where researchers have looked, from the highlands of Papua New Guinea to the villages of Scandinavia, from the deserts of North Africa to the islands of the Pacific, they have found lullabies. Every culture, without exception, has developed songs specifically designed to soothe infants to sleep. This is not coincidence. This is biology. Researchers at Harvard University, led by Dr. Samuel Mayer, published a landmark study in 2019 in the journal Science, confirming that lullabies share universal acoustic features across all cultures. They tend to have a slow tempo, a simple melody, a narrow pitch range, and a high degree of repetition. Even listeners who do not speak the language can identify a lullaby simply by how it sounds. Imagine walking through a museum of human history, stretching back tens of thousands of years. In every room, in every era, in every corner of the world, you would hear the same thing. A voice, soft and steady, singing a child to sleep. The words would change, the melody would shift, but the rhythm would be the same. Perhaps you might notice the quality of the voice you are hearing right now. Not its words, but its rhythm, the way it rises and falls. Gently, predictably, like a song without a melody. And in that gentle rhythm, something ancient stirs. The same impulse that moved the very first parent to sing the very first lullaby. A rhythm older than language, older than memory, older than civilization itself. Gentle rocking increases sleep spindles and helps you fall asleep faster. In 2011, researchers at the University of Geneva published a study in the journal Current Biology that changed our understanding of why rocking is so soothing. They placed adults in a bed that rocked gently at a frequency of about 0.25 Hz, roughly the pace of a slow hammock swing, and measured their brain activity as they fell asleep. The results were remarkable. Participants who were rocked fell asleep faster than those who lay still. More importantly, the rocking significantly increased the number of sleep spindles in their brains, those brief, protective bursts of activity that help shield sleep from outside disturbance. The vestibular system, which detects motion and balance, was sending signals directly to the brain's sleep centers. Imagine a small boat moored in a quiet harbor. The water lifts it gently, then lowers it, then lifts it again. The motion is so subtle, so predictable, that everything inside the boat grows still. Not because the boat has stopped moving, but because the movement itself has become a kind of stillness. Perhaps you might notice the subtle sensation of your body being supported, the surface beneath you, holding your weight. If you imagine that surface moving just slightly, just barely like a boat on calm water, your body may begin to remember what it feels like to be rocked. And in that memory, something settles. Deep in the brainstem, deep in the bones. A rhythm your body has trusted since the very first time someone held you. Music at 60 beats per minute can synchronize with your resting heart rate and guide you towards sleep. 60 beats per minute is a tempo that sits right at the boundary between wakefulness and rest. It matches the lower end of a healthy resting heart rate. And when you listen to music at this pace, something subtle begins to happen. Your heart rate starts to align with the tempo. Your breathing slows. Your autonomic nervous system shifts from alertness toward calm. Researchers at the University of Sheffield found that music played at 60 BPM, or slightly below, significantly reduced pre-sleep anxiety and shortened the time it took participants to fall asleep. The phenomenon is called auditory cardiac entrainment. The heart literally begins to beat in time with the music it hears. Think of two pendulums mounted on the same shelf. Over time, through the subtle vibrations passing between them, they begin to swing in unison. Your heart and the music do the same thing, finding each other through the invisible medium of rhythm, synchronizing without effort, settling into a shared, gentle pulse. Perhaps you might notice the pace of these words. Not hurried, not urgent, each sentence arriving at its own gentle tempo. A rhythm designed not to excite, but to accompany you as you slow down. And as the words continue, your heart may already be finding its own quieter tempo. A beat that matches the night. A rhythm that belongs to sleep. A parent's voice activates more brain regions in an infant than any other sound. When an infant hears a familiar voice, particularly the voice that spoke to them before they were born, something extraordinary happens in their brain. Functional MRI studies, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, showed that a parent's voice activates not only the auditory cortex, but also regions associated with emotion, social bonding, and reward. No other sound produces such a widespread, calming response. Dr. Daniel Abrams at Stanford University found that the emotional circuits activated by a familiar voice are the same ones that respond to feelings of safety and comfort. The voice does not even need to say meaningful words. It is the rhythm, the tone, the familiar cadence that matters most. The brain recognizes the pattern and responds with calm. Imagine a lighthouse on a foggy night. A ship at sea cannot see the shore, but it can hear the steady pulse of the foghorn, Always the same rhythm, always the same pitch, and it knows exactly where safety lies. A parent's voice is that foghorn for a child's brain. A rhythmic signal that says, without words, you are not alone. Perhaps you might recall the sound of a voice that made you feel safe. Not the words, just the rhythm, the gentle rise and fall, the warmth beneath the syllables. And in that memory, the same circuits may still glow softly. The same ancient response. The same quiet reassurance that someone, somewhere, is keeping watch. Humming activates the vagus nerve and triggers a calming response throughout your body. When you hum, the vibrations travel through the tissues of your throat and chest, directly stimulating the vagus nerve that long, wandering nerve that connects your brain to nearly every organ in your body. The result is a measurable decrease in heart rate, a drop in blood pressure, and a shift in your nervous system toward the parasympathetic state, the state of rest and digest. A study published in the International Journal of Yoga found that humming, even for just a few minutes, significantly increased heart rate variability, a key indicator of nervous system flexibility and resilience. The researchers noted that the rhythmic vibration of humming seems to act as an internal massage for the vagus nerve, gently coaxing the body into calm. Imagine placing your hand on a beehive on a warm afternoon. You feel the steady vibration of thousands of wings, all beating together in a low, continuous hum. The vibration is not startling. It is oddly comforting, a living rhythm you can feel in your palm. When you hum, your body becomes that beehive, vibrating gently from the inside, soothing itself with its own sound. Perhaps you might notice the area of your chest right now. If you imagine a gentle hum resonating there, not making the sound, just imagining it, you might feel something soften. And in that softening, the vagus nerve receives its quiet message. A rhythm of safety, a vibration of peace, a hum that says, all is well. White noise helps the brain relax by providing a steady, predictable pattern with no surprises. White noise is a sound that contains every frequency the human ear can hear, all played at roughly equal intensity. It sounds like static, or rainfall, or the rush of wind through trees. And for many people, it is remarkably effective at promoting sleep. Research published in the journal Sleep Medicine found that white noise reduced the time it took participants to fall asleep by nearly 40%. The explanation lies in predictive coding. When the brain hears a steady, unchanging sound, it quickly learns that there is nothing new to attend to. The auditory cortex stops sending alert signals. The brain relaxes because it has nothing left to predict. Think of a calm, overcast sky. There are no shapes to find in the clouds, no sunbeams to track, no birds to follow. The sky is simply even, uniform, complete. White noise does the same thing for your ears. It fills the auditory landscape so completely that there is nothing left to listen for. Perhaps you might notice the sounds around you right now, whatever they are: distant, close, familiar. Unfamiliar, you do not need to attend to them. Let them blend into the background, becoming their own kind of white noise. And as they fade, the brain does what it does best when there are no surprises left. It lets go, and it rests. Rhythmic drumming has been used for thousands of years to induce trance-like states of calm. long before neuroscience had a name for it. Cultures around the world discovered that repetitive drumming could alter consciousness. Shamanic traditions in Siberia, Mongolia, West Africa, and the Americas all used steady, monotonous drumming, typically at 4 to 4.5 beats per second, to induce meditative or trance states. Modern researchers at Stanford University found that this drumming frequency corresponds almost exactly to the theta brainwave range 4 to 8 Hz, the frequency associated with deep relaxation and the threshold of sleep. When the brain hears a steady external rhythm in this range, it tends to entrain to it, matching its own oscillations to the beat. The drum becomes a pacemaker for the brain. Imagine a cave, lit by firelight, 10,000 years ago. The only sound is the soft, steady beat of a hand drum. The rhythm does not change. It does not speed up or slow down. It simply continues, beat after beat after beat, until the minds gathered around the fire begin to drift somewhere quiet and deep. Perhaps you might notice a gentle heaviness in your eyelids. Not the heaviness of exhaustion, but the heaviness of letting go, the kind that comes when there is nothing more to do. And in that heaviness, the ancient drum still echoes. A rhythm older than cities, older than writing, older than the names we give to things. Chanting and repetitive prayer have measurable effects on heart rate and breathing. From the Tibetan Om Mani Padme Hum to the Catholic Rosary, from the Islamic dhikr to the Hindu japa, virtually every major spiritual tradition has developed practices built around repetitive vocalization, and science has begun to explain why. Research published in the British Medical Journal found that when participants recited the Rosary in Latin, their breathing naturally synchronized to a rate of about 6 breaths per minute, a frequency that maximizes heart rate variability and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. The researchers called it a coincidence between ancient spiritual wisdom and modern cardiovascular science. The repetition itself creates the rhythm, and the rhythm creates the calm. Imagine a stone dropped into a still pond. The ripple expands outward in a perfect circle. Then another stone, dropped in the same place. Another ripple, and another, each one identical, each one predictable, each one expanding into the same quiet water. Chanting is like those stones, each repetition sending a ripple of calm through the body, each one reinforcing the last. Perhaps you might notice the rhythm of your own breathing, not forcing it to change, just allowing it to settle into whatever pace feels natural right now. And in that natural pace, the body is already chanting its own quiet prayer. Each breath a repetition, each repetition a small step deeper into stillness. Recordings of heartbeat sounds can help newborns sleep more peacefully in hospital nurseries. In neonatal intensive care units around the world, nurses have discovered that playing recordings of a steady heartbeat helps premature and distressed newborns sleep longer, cry less, and gain weight more quickly. The sound is so effective that many hospitals now consider it a standard part of care. A study published in the journal Pediatrics found that newborns exposed to recorded heartbeat sounds at 60 to 80 beats per minute showed significantly more stable heart rates and oxygen levels than those in quiet environments. The researchers concluded that the rhythmic sound recreates the acoustic environment of the womb, the one place where the infant felt completely safe. Think of a small bird, just hatched, still in the nest. It has never seen the sky. It has never felt the wind. But it knows the warmth of the feathers above it and the steady pulse of the heart beside it. That is all it needs to feel safe. Human infants are the same. The heartbeat is the first rhythm of safety, and its echo can calm us long after we leave the nest. Perhaps you might place your hand gently over your own heart, not pressing, just resting, feeling the quiet thump beneath your palm. And in that simple gesture, you are doing what humans have always done. Returning to the first rhythm, the most familiar pattern, the oldest lullaby in the world. ASMR triggers are often rhythmic, repetitive sounds that create a tingling sensation of calm. Autonomous sensory meridian response, or ASMR, is a tingling sensation that begins at the scalp and moves down the neck and spine in response to specific auditory or visual triggers. And researchers have noticed that the most effective triggers share a common feature. They are rhythmic and repetitive. Tapping, brushing, whispering, crinkling, turning pages. All involve a steady, predictable pattern of soft sound. A study published in the journal PLOS found that ASMR videos significantly reduced heart rate and increased feelings of relaxation and social connection. The researchers suggested that ASMR may activate the same neural pathways as gentle grooming behaviors in primates, an ancient form of social bonding that relies entirely on repetitive, rhythmic touch. Imagine sitting beside a stream and listening to the water flow over stones. Each splash is slightly different, but the overall pattern is steady, continuous, predictable. After a few minutes, the sound stops being something you listen to and becomes something you rest inside of. ASMR works the same way. The repetition becomes a kind of acoustic blanket. Perhaps you might notice the soft sound of your own breathing, the gentle whisper of air moving in and out. It is its own kind of ASMR, a personal, private rhythm that belongs only to you. And as you listen to it, the tingling may not come, but the calm might, and that is more than enough. Binaural beats create a rhythmic pulse inside your brain that can guide it towards slower frequencies. When you listen to two tones of slightly different frequencies, one in each ear, your brain perceives a third tone, a pulsing beat that oscillates at the difference between the two. If one ear hears 200 Hz and the other hears 204 Hz, your brain creates a 4 Hz pulse right in the theta range. The doorway to sleep. Research published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience found that listening to binaural beats in the theta and delta range before bed significantly improved sleep quality and reduced the time it took to fall asleep. The effect is called frequency following response, the brain's tendency to match its own oscillations to an external rhythmic stimulus. Imagine two tuning forks, struck at nearly the same pitch, held on either side of your head. The sound they make together is not a single, steady tone. It pulses. It breathes. It rises and falls in a gentle, rhythmic wave. That wave exists only inside your mind, created by the brain's own interpretation of two slightly different inputs. Perhaps you might notice a subtle sense of rhythm in the silence between these words. Not a sound you can hear, but a feeling you can sense. A gentle pulsing that might already be guiding your thoughts towards something slower. And in that pulsing, the brain does what it has always done with rhythm. It follows. It synchronizes. It lets the pattern lead it home. Singing bowls produce overtones that create complex, rhythmic patterns of sound. Tibetan singing bowls, crystal bowls, and similar instruments produce not a single note, but a rich tapestry of overtones, multiple frequencies vibrating simultaneously, creating patterns of interference that pulse and shimmer in the air. When you strike a singing bowl, the sound does not simply ring, it breathes. It expands and contracts in slow, rhythmic waves of constructive and destructive interference. Research at the University of California, San Diego, found that singing bowl sound baths significantly reduced tension, anxiety, fatigue, and depressed mood in participants. The study suggested that the complex harmonic patterns engage the auditory system in a way that is simultaneously rich and predictable, giving the brain enough to process without creating surprise or alarm. Imagine dropping a stone into a perfectly still pond, then dropping another stone nearby. The ripples from each stone meet and merge, creating new patterns, some amplified. Some cancelled a shifting mosaic of gentle motion across the surface. A singing bowl does this with sound, creating ripples that meet and merge inside your ears, inside your mind. Perhaps you might imagine that you can hear, somewhere in the distance, the fading tone of a bell that was struck long ago. Not sharp, not sudden, just resonating, slowly fading, taking its time to dissolve into silence. And in that slow dissolving, something inside you may be dissolving too. Some small tension you did not know you were holding, released by a rhythm made of air and metal and time. Crickets chirp in a rhythmic pattern that is so regular it can be used to estimate the temperature. In 1897, a physicist named Amos Dolbear published a formula known as Dolbear's law. Count the number of cricket chirps in 14 seconds. Add 40, and you have the approximate temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. This is possible because cricket chirps are remarkably rhythmic, governed by the rate of biochemical reactions in the insect's muscles, which speed up in warmth and slow in cold. Neuroacoustic researchers have found that the steady, repetitive chirping of crickets falls within a frequency range that is particularly effective at masking disruptive sounds and promoting relaxation, like white noise, but with a subtle organic pulse. Cricket song provides the brain with a steady, predictable pattern that requires no interpretation and no response. Imagine lying in a field on a warm summer evening. The grass is soft beneath you. The sky is deepening from blue to purple. And all around you, the crickets have begun their nightly chorus, a sound so steady, so rhythmic, so perfectly predictable that it seems less like noise and more like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Perhaps you might allow yourself to feel the warmth of that imaginary evening, the soft air, the quiet sky, the gentle pulse of living things all around you. And in that warmth, the chirping continues. Ancient, patient, unwavering. A lullaby composed not by humans, but by the night itself. A cat's purr vibrates at a frequency that promotes healing and relaxation. Cats purr at a frequency between 25 and 50 Hz, a range that research has associated with tissue repair, bone healing, and pain relief. But beyond the physical benefits, the rhythmic vibration of a purr has a profoundly calming effect on the human nervous system. A study published in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America found that the specific frequencies of a cat's purr activate parasympathetic responses in humans who hear them, lowering heart rate, reducing blood pressure, and promoting a sense of well-being. The purr is not just a cat expressing contentment. It is a rhythmic vibration that broadcasts calm to every nervous system within earshot. Imagine a small cat curled against your chest, its body warm and soft, vibrating gently with each breath. The sound is barely audible, more felt than heard, a low, continuous hum that seems to resonate in your ribs, in your sternum, in the quiet spaces between your heartbeats. It is the sound of a creature at perfect peace. Perhaps you might notice the area of your chest right now. If you imagine that gentle vibration there, warm, steady, rhythmic, you may feel something loosen, something soften. And in that softening, the purr continues. Not from a cat, but from the quiet center of your own body. A rhythm of comfort, a vibration of rest. The sound of rain follows a pattern of gentle randomness that the brain finds deeply soothing. Rain does not fall in perfect rhythm. Each drop lands at a slightly different time, in a slightly different place, with a slightly different force, and yet, taken together. The overall pattern is remarkably consistent, a steady wash of sound that varies just enough to keep the brain gently engaged, but not enough to create surprise or alarm. Neuroscientists call this type of pattern pink noise, a sound where the lower frequencies are slightly louder than the higher ones, creating a warm, deep quality. Research published in the Journal of Theoretical Biology found that pink noise, like rain, significantly improved deep sleep when played during the night. The brain responds to it as a signal that the environment is stable, predictable, and safe. Imagine standing beneath a tin roof during a gentle rain. The sound surrounds you above, beside, everywhere, a soft percussion that never repeats exactly but never truly changes. It is chaos and order, woven together into something that feels like neither. It simply feels like peace. Perhaps you might let the sounds around you become a kind of rain. Whatever you hear, near or far, loud or soft, let it all blend into one gentle wash of background noise. Not listening to any single sound, just letting all of them fall. And as they fall, the brain does what it does when the rain comes. It stops watching for danger, stops listening for change, and simply settles beneath the steady, rhythmic sound of a world at rest. Familiar music releases dopamine in the brain even before the expected notes arrive. When you listen to a song you know well, your brain does not simply react to each note as it comes. It anticipates, it predicts, and in the brief moment between the prediction and the arrival of the expected sound, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. Research by Dr. Robert Zatorre at McGill University, published in the journal Nature Neuroscience, showed that peak dopamine release occurs not at the climactic moment of a musical passage, but just before it, during the anticipation. The pleasure of familiar music lies not in surprise, but in the satisfaction of a prediction fulfilled. Imagine knowing exactly when the sun will rise. You stand in the dark, watching the eastern horizon, and you feel a quiet thrill not because the sunrise will surprise you, but because you know it is coming. The certainty itself is the reward. Familiar music works the same way. Each expected note is a small sunrise, confirming that the world is predictable and safe. Perhaps you might think of a melody you know by heart, not playing it in your mind, but simply remembering how it feels to know what comes next. That feeling of gentle certainty. And in that certainty, the dopamine flows quietly. Not the sharp rush of excitement, but the warm, steady glow of a pattern confirmed, a rhythm trusted, a prediction kept. Your perception of musical tempo slows down as you become drowsy. As you drift towards sleep, your internal sense of time begins to stretch. A study published in the journal Psychological Research found that drowsy participants consistently perceived musical tempos as faster than they actually were because their internal clock was slowing down. What was objectively 60 beats per minute began to feel like 70 or 80. This temporal distortion is linked to changes in brainwave activity. As alpha waves give way to theta waves, the brain's internal metronome decelerates. The same music that seemed calm during wakefulness begins to feel almost urgent because the listener's own rhythm has dropped below the tempo of the song. Imagine watching a river from the bank. When you are walking alongside it, the water seems to move at a normal pace. But if you sit down and grow still, the same river begins to seem faster, not because the water has changed, but because you have slowed down. Time works this way too. As you rest, the world outside begins to move at a tempo that no longer matches your own. Perhaps you might notice whether these words feel slower or faster than they did at the beginning. Whatever you feel is perfectly natural. It simply means your internal rhythm is finding its own gentle pace. And as that pace slows, the world outside grows quieter too. Not because it has changed, but because you are drifting into a different tempo. The unhurried, patient tempo of rest. Rhythmic, repetitive speech patterns activate the brain's default mode network. The default mode network, or DMN, is a collection of brain regions that becomes most active when you are not focused on the outside world, when you are daydreaming, reflecting, or simply resting. And researchers have found that rhythmic, monotonous speech is one of the most reliable ways to activate it. A study published in Neuroimage found that when participants listened to speech with a steady, predictable rhythm and minimal emotional variation, their default mode networks became significantly more active. The brain, having determined that the speech required no urgent attention, shifted into its resting state, the state associated with internal reflection, memory consolidation, and the early stages of sleep. Imagine a grandfather reading a story by firelight. The words do not matter as much as the rhythm of the voice steady, unhurried, rising and falling in the same gentle arc. Sentence after sentence, the story becomes less a narrative and more a lullaby. The meaning dissolving into melody, the melody dissolving into sleep. Perhaps you might notice that the content of these words is becoming less important than their rhythm. If you have stopped tracking every fact, every detail, that is not a failure. That is exactly what is supposed to happen. And as the details fade, the rhythm remains. Steady, continuous, patient, carrying you not toward understanding, but toward rest. Ocean waves follow a rhythm that averages about one wave every 6 to 8 seconds. Stand at the shore of any ocean. anywhere in the world, and you will hear the same rhythm. A wave gathers, is a spreck, breaks, and retreats. Then another, and another. The interval between waves, called the wave period, typically falls between 6 and 8 seconds. A tempo so consistent that it has been used as a natural metronome by sailors for centuries. Research published in the journal Environment and Behavior found that the sound of ocean waves significantly reduced physiological markers of stress, including cortisol levels and heart rate. The researchers suggested that the rhythmic quality of wave sounds activates the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling to the body that the environment is stable and safe. The repetition itself is the message. Imagine sitting on a beach at dusk. The sand is cool beneath you. The horizon is a thin line of fading gold. And before you, the ocean does what it has done for 4 billion years. It rises. It falls. It returns. Not because it is trying to reach you, not because it wants anything, simply because that is what the ocean does. Perhaps you might let your breathing synchronize with an imaginary wave. A slow inhale as the water gathers. A pause as it crests. A long, gentle exhale as it slides back to the sea. And in that rhythm, something vast and patient whispers. The same thing the ocean has always whispered. Come and go. Rise and fall. There is no hurry here. Wind chimes produce tones at unpredictable intervals, yet the overall pattern feels deeply calming. Wind chimes are unusual among soothing sounds because their individual notes are unpredictable, determined by the random movements of the wind. And yet, the overall effect is one of serenity. The reason lies in the quality of the tones themselves and the gentle pace at which they arrive. Acousticians have noted that wind chimes typically produce tones with strong harmonic overtones and slow decay. The notes ring out and fade gradually, overlapping with the next in a wash of gentle resonance. A study in the Journal of Environmental Psychology found that natural sounds with this quality of gentle unpredictability, technically called stochastic patterns, reduce stress more effectively than either silence or perfectly regular sounds. Imagine a porch on a quiet afternoon. A breeze moves through the trees, touching the chimes, drawing one clear note into the air. Then silence. Then another note, from a different tube, at a different pitch. The gaps between the notes are as beautiful as the notes themselves, small pockets of silence framed by sound. Perhaps you might notice the silences between these sentences, not empty spaces, but resting places, small pauses where the mind can breathe. And in those pauses, something chimes softly. Not a sound you can hear, but a feeling you can sense. The gentle music of a mind finding its own quiet intervals. The acoustic environment of the womb is a constant wash of rhythmic sound. For approximately 9 months before birth, every human being lives inside a world of continuous sound. The mother's heartbeat, the rush of blood through the placenta, the muffled rumble of digestion, the distant murmur of voices, all blend together into a rich, complex soundscape that is never silent. Researchers at the University of British Columbia measured the intrauterine sound environment and found that it averages about 75 to 85 decibels, roughly the volume of a vacuum cleaner. But the quality of the sound is fundamentally different from external noise. It is filtered, softened, and dominated by low-frequency rhythms. It is, in essence, the original pink noise. Imagine being inside a cave behind a waterfall. The roar of water surrounds you, but it is muffled by the stone walls. You can feel the vibration in the ground beneath you, in the air around you. It is loud, but it is not jarring. It is simply everywhere, constant, complete. The womb sounds like this, a world where sound and silence are the same thing. Perhaps you might imagine that kind of completeness now, a sound that surrounds you so fully that it stops being sound and becomes simply presence. And in that presence, the oldest memory stirs. A time before thought, before sight, before name, when all you knew was rhythm, and rhythm was all you needed. The rhythmic motion of a train has lulled travelers to sleep for nearly 200 years. Since the earliest days of rail travel, passengers have noticed that the steady clacking of wheels on tracks has a powerful soporific effect. The rhythm is remarkably regular, determined by the length of the rail segments and the speed of the train, and it combines with the gentle rocking motion of the carriage to create a multi-sensory lullaby. Research published in the journal Sleep found that the combination of rhythmic auditory stimulation and gentle vestibular motion, exactly what a train provides, is significantly more effective at inducing sleep than either stimulus alone. The two rhythms reinforce each other, creating a kind of sensory redundancy that signals overwhelming safety to the nervous system. Imagine a night train crossing a wide, flat landscape. Outside the window, the world is dark. Inside, the carriage sways gently. The wheels below maintain their steady, hypnotic beat clack. Clack, 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 a rhythm so dependable, so unwavering, that it becomes invisible. You stop hearing it, and in that moment of forgetting, sleep arrives. Perhaps you might notice a sense of gentle motion. Not movement, exactly, but a feeling of being carried, as if something larger than you were moving forward, and all you had to do was rest. And as that feeling deepens, the train rolls on, through the darkness, through the night, through the quiet hours, carrying you somewhere you have always wanted to go. The ticking of a clock can serve as a gentle anchor for a wandering mind. In a world of digital silence, the mechanical clock has become a relic. But for centuries, the steady tick-tock of a pendulum or balance wheel provided a rhythmic backdrop to daily life, and especially to sleep. The sound is perfectly regular, perfectly predictable, and perfectly meaningless. It carries no information, no emotion, no urgency. It simply marks time, 1 second at a time. Research in cognitive psychology has shown that steady, rhythmic background sounds reduce mind-wandering and rumination, the kind of circular, anxious thinking that keeps so many people awake at night. The ticking gives the brain just enough to listen to without providing anything to think about. It becomes a gentle anchor, holding attention in the present moment without requiring any effort. Imagine an old study. Late at night, the desk lamp casts a warm circle of light. The books are closed, and on the mantelpiece, a clock ticks steadily. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second identical to the last. Each second a tiny permission to let the previous one go. Perhaps you might notice the passage of time right now, not as something to track or measure, but as something that is simply happening, carrying you forward, gently, without requiring your attention. And in that gentle carrying, the clock ticks on, not counting anything that matters, simply keeping rhythm, simply being steady, simply ticking toward morning. The sound of your own breathing is the most personal and portable lullaby you possess. Of all the rhythmic sounds available to you, your own breathing is the most constant, the most accessible, and the most intimately tied to your state of consciousness. It is always with you. It requires no technology, no recording, no external device. It is the sound of your body doing what it needs to do to keep you alive. Research at the University of Freiburg found that simply paying attention to the sound and sensation of one's own breathing for 10 minutes before bed significantly improved sleep onset latency and sleep quality. The act of listening to the breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system and engages the same neural circuits as meditation, without requiring any special technique or training. Imagine a seashell held to your ear. The sound you hear is not the ocean, it is the echo of your own blood moving through the vessels near your ear, amplified by the shell's chamber. Your breathing is like that shell, a way of hearing yourself, of turning inward, of listening to the rhythm that has been with you all along. Perhaps you might listen to that rhythm now. The soft whisper of air entering, the gentle sigh of air leaving, nothing else, just this. And in that listening, the world grows very small, and very quiet, and very, very still. The melody of a lullaby is designed to descend, to carry the listener gently downward into sleep. Music theorists have analyzed hundreds of lullabies from dozens of cultures and found a consistent pattern. The melodic contour tends to move downward. The phrases begin on a higher note and resolve on a lower one. This descending pattern mirrors the natural trajectory of falling asleep, a gradual descent from alertness to drowsiness to the deep quiet of unconsciousness. Dr. Sandra Trehub at the University of Toronto, one of the world's leading researchers on infant-directed music, found that descending melodic contours are consistently rated as more soothing than ascending ones. The brain interprets a falling pitch as a signal of decreasing arousal, the vocal equivalent of lying down, of lowering your guard, of settling in. Imagine a leaf falling from a high branch on a windless autumn day. It does not plummet. It drifts. It sways. It descends in slow, gentle arcs, each one lower than the last, until it comes to rest on the soft ground below. A lullaby is like that leaf. Each phrase a gentle arc, each arc a little lower, each repetition carrying you closer to the ground. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of gentle descent, not falling, not sinking, just settling, like a leaf finding the forest floor. And as you settle, the melody continues not in the air, but in the quiet spaces of your mind, descending, softening, carrying you down, one gentle note at a time, toward the quietest place you know. Ocean waves have been following the same rhythm for over 4 billion years. Long before the first fish swam, before the first plant grew on land, before the first raindrop fell on soil, there were waves. The earliest oceans formed roughly 4.4 billion years ago, and from that moment, the water began to move in the same rhythmic pattern it follows today. Wind pushes the surface, gravity pulls it back, and the result is a cycle of rise and fall that has never stopped. Geologists studying ancient sedimentary rocks have found wave ripple marks preserved in stone that are 3.2 billion years old patterns, identical to those you would see on any sandy beach today. The physics of wave motion has not changed. The rhythm is the same. Only the creatures listening to it have changed. Imagine standing at the edge of time itself, looking out over the first ocean on Earth. There are no trees, no birds, no sound but the wind and the water. And yet the waves arrive at the shore in the same patient rhythm they will follow for billions of years to come. Rising, breaking, retreating, returning. The first lullaby on Earth was not sung, it was waved. Perhaps you might let that vastness settle over you, not as something to comprehend, but as something to rest inside of. 4 billion years of the same gentle rhythm. And tonight, it continues. And in that continuity, something immeasurably old whispers. You are not the first to be soothed by this rhythm. And you will not be the last. The tides rise and fall twice a day, governed by the gravitational pull of the moon. Every 12 hours and 25 minutes, the ocean breathes. It inhales, the tide rises, creeping up the shore, filling tide pools, lifting boats from the mud. Then it exhales, the water retreats, exposing sand and rock and the secret lives of creatures that live between worlds. This rhythm is not random. It is gravitational. The moon, 239,000 miles away, pulls the ocean toward itself with a force so gentle, so patient, that most people never feel it happening. Researchers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have tracked tidal patterns for over a century and found that they are among the most predictable natural phenomena on Earth. The tide tables can be calculated decades in advance with extraordinary accuracy. The moon does not forget. The ocean does not resist. The rhythm simply continues. Imagine the ocean as a sleeping chest, rising and falling with each breath. The moon is the breath itself, invisible, distant, but utterly reliable. Twice a day, the water lifts. Twice a day, it settles. A rhythm so vast it moves entire oceans, yet so gentle you could sleep through it. Perhaps you might notice the gentle rise and fall of your own breathing, not controlling it, just observing. Each inhale, a small tide coming in. Each exhale, a small tide going out. And in that rhythm, the moon pulls gently, not on the ocean, but on the quiet waters within you, coaxing them towards stillness. Every sunrise and sunset follows a pattern so reliable that ancient civilizations built their entire calendars around it. The sun rises, the sun sets. It has done this every single day for 4.6 billion years. Not once has it missed a day. Not once has it arrived late. The rotation of the Earth is so consistent that early astronomers could predict the exact minute of sunrise centuries into the future, and they were right. The Egyptians built their temples aligned to the sunrise on the solstice. The Maya calculated the solar year to within 11 seconds of the modern value. The Stonehenge monument marks the exact point on the horizon where the sun rises on the longest day. All of this precision was possible because the sun's rhythm is, quite literally, as reliable as clockwork. Clockwork was invented to imitate it. Imagine watching the sun sink below the horizon on a quiet evening. The sky shifts from blue to gold, to pink to violet to deep. Endless blue-black. You have seen this before. you will see it again. And in that certainty, in the absolute, unshakable knowledge that the sun will return, there is a kind of peace that no other fact can provide. Perhaps you might allow the day to end, not with effort, not with resistance, just allowing it to set, the way the sun does. Quietly, beautifully, without any need to announce its departure. And as the light fades, the darkness that follows is not emptiness. It is permission. Permission to rest until the rhythm brings the light back again. Rainfall follows seasonal patterns that have repeated for millions of years. The monsoons of South Asia, the dry summers of the Mediterranean, the autumn rains of the Pacific Northwest, all are expressions of atmospheric rhythms that have been cycling for longer than humans have existed. The earth tilts on its axis. The oceans warm and cool. The air rises and falls. And rain comes when the pattern says it is time. Climatologists studying ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica have traced rainfall patterns back hundreds of thousands of years and found the same cycles repeating wet periods and dry periods, each lasting predictable durations, driven by the same orbital mechanics that govern the seasons. The rain does not decide when to fall. It falls when the rhythm calls. Imagine a field in late summer, dry and golden under the sun. The soil is cracked. The grass has turned to straw. And then, one afternoon, the clouds gather. The air grows heavy, and the rain comes not suddenly, but with the slow, building certainty of something that was always going to happen. The earth drinks, the soil softens, the cycle continues. Perhaps you might imagine the sound of that rain falling on dry earth. The first drops, heavy and slow, then the steady rhythm of a downpour that has been coming for months, for centuries, for millennia. And in that sound, the earth is saying what it has always said. Everything returns. Everything comes back. The rain always comes. Rivers follow the same path for thousands of years, carving their rhythm into the landscape itself. A river does not choose its course. It follows gravity, flowing downhill along the path of least resistance. And over time, over centuries and millennia, it carves that path deeper and deeper into the rock and soil. The Grand Canyon was carved by the Colorado River over the course of 6 million years. And the river is still flowing, still carving, still following the same ancient rhythm. Hydrologists have found that rivers develop remarkably regular meander patterns, the gentle S-curves that rivers make as they wind across flat landscapes. These meanders follow mathematical ratios that are consistent across rivers of all sizes, from tiny streams to the Amazon. The pattern is not designed. It emerges naturally from the physics of flowing water. Imagine following a river from its source in the mountains to the sea, through forests and valleys, across plains and through gorges. The water flows in one continuous, unbroken line. It never stops. It never reverses. It simply follows the path that gravity and time have carved for it, a path of least resistance, a path of patient repetition. Perhaps you might imagine your thoughts as a river, not trying to stop them or redirect them, just letting them flow along whatever path they find, carrying whatever they carry, moving gently toward the sea. And as they flow, they soften the landscape they pass through, wearing down the edges, smoothing the stones, carving a gentle channel toward rest. The dawn chorus of birdsong follows the same sequence every morning. In forests and gardens around the world, the birds begin to sing before the sun rises, and they do so in a remarkably consistent order. The blackbird sings first, followed by the robin, then the wren, then the chaffinch. Each species has its own place in the sequence, determined by the sensitivity of its eyes to low light levels. The birds with the largest eyes sing first, because they can see the earliest light. Ornithologists at the University of Exeter found that the dawn chorus sequence is so reliable that experienced birdwatchers can estimate the time of morning simply by which species is currently singing. The chorus is a natural clock, marking the transition from night to day with a symphony that follows the same program every single morning. Imagine lying in bed just before dawn. The room is still dark. The world is still quiet. And then, from somewhere outside, a single bird begins to sing. Then another, and another. The sound builds slowly, gently, each new voice joining the conversation at precisely the right moment, not because the birds have rehearsed, but because the rhythm of light determines the rhythm of song. Perhaps you might imagine that dawn is very far away right now. The chorus has not yet begun. The night birds have finished their songs, and in this quiet interval between one chorus and the next, there is nothing to do but rest. And in that rest, the birds wait too. Patient, silent, trusting that the light will come when the rhythm says it is time. Whale songs repeat in patterns that can last for hours and travel thousands of miles. Humpback whales produce songs that are among the most complex vocalizations in the animal kingdom. A single song can last anywhere from 6 to 35 minutes, and the whale will repeat it note for note, phrase for hours on end, sometimes for an entire day. And the songs travel in the deep ocean. Whale vocalizations can be detected over distances of more than 10,000 miles. Researchers at the University of Queensland discovered that humpback whale songs evolve gradually. Over time, new phrases are introduced. Old ones are dropped, but at any given moment, all the males in a population sing the same song. The pattern spreads from whale to whale across entire ocean basins, like a melody passed from voice to voice across the sea. Imagine being deep underwater, in the blue-black silence of the open ocean, and from somewhere impossibly far away, impossibly deep, a sound reaches you. A long, low, wavering note, followed by another and another. A song so slow, so vast, so patient that it seems to belong not to a single creature, but to the ocean itself. Perhaps you might imagine that sound now. Not loud, not close, just present. A distant melody, repeating somewhere in the depths, asking nothing, expecting nothing, simply singing because that is what whales do. And in that distant song, the ocean hums. A rhythm older than memory, deeper than thought, wider than sleep. Fireflies synchronize their flashing to create a single, unified rhythm of light. In certain species of fireflies, particularly those found in the forests of Southeast Asia and the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, thousands of individual insects will spontaneously synchronize their flashing, blinking on and off in perfect unison, turning entire riverbanks and forest canopies into pulsing waves of light. Mathematicians at Cornell University, led by Stephen Strogatz, demonstrated that this synchronization requires no leader and no conductor. Each firefly adjusts its own rhythm slightly based on the flashes of its neighbors. And over the course of a few minutes, the entire population converges on a single, shared beat. The phenomenon is called emergent synchrony order, arising from chaos through the simplest of rules. Imagine a dark forest at midnight. At first, the fireflies blink randomly, a scatter of tiny lights, here and there, with no pattern. But slowly, gradually, the flashes begin to align. 2 lights blink together, then 4, then 20, then thousands, all pulsing in the same rhythm, turning the darkness into a cathedral of silent, breathing light. Perhaps you might imagine the thoughts in your mind as those fireflies. Right now, they might be scattered, random, each one blinking at its own pace. But given time, given patience, they will find their way to the same rhythm. And when they do, the mind grows still. Not because the thoughts have stopped, but because they have synchronized, settling into one shared, gentle pulse of quiet. Cicadas emerge in cycles of 13 or 17 years. With mathematical precision, periodical cicadas spend most of their lives underground 13 or 17 years, depending on the species feeding on tree root sap in complete darkness and silence. Then, when the soil temperature reaches precisely 64 degrees Fahrenheit, they emerge by the billions, filling the air with their rhythmic buzzing for 4 to 6 weeks before laying eggs and dying. The next generation will not appear for another 13 or 17 years. Evolutionary biologists believe that these prime-numbered cycles are an adaptation to avoid predators. Since 13 and 17 are prime numbers, it is extremely difficult for any predator with a shorter life cycle to synchronize with the cicada's emergence. The mathematics of survival have produced one of nature's most patient rhythms. Imagine a clock that ticks once every 17 years. For 16 years and 11 months, the clock is silent. The forest is quiet. The soil is still. And then, on a warm evening in late spring, billions of voices rise from the earth in a chorus that has been building, in silence, for nearly 2 decades. It is one of the most patient rhythms in the living world. Perhaps you might notice how patience feels in your body right now. Not waiting for something, not anticipating anything, just being still, the way the earth is still above the sleeping cicadas. And in that stillness, something ancient rests beneath you, counting slowly, breathing slowly, in no hurry at all. Leaves rustle in the wind with a frequency spectrum that closely resembles pink noise. When wind moves through the canopy of a forest, the sound it produces is not random. The rustling of leaves creates a complex pattern of sound waves that, when analyzed, closely matches the spectral profile of pink noise, a type of sound in which lower frequencies are slightly louder than higher ones. This is the same profile as rainfall, ocean waves, and the background hum of the universe itself. Acousticians at Kyoto University found that natural sounds with a pink noise profile, including wind in leaves, significantly improved sleep quality and cognitive performance. The brain appears to find this particular frequency balance inherently soothing, perhaps because it mimics the acoustic environment in which human hearing evolved over millions of years. Imagine a forest on a warm afternoon. The trees are tall and old. A breeze moves through the canopy high above, and the leaves respond a soft, rushing whisper that rises and falls and rises again. It is not loud enough to demand attention. It is not quiet enough to create silence. It is simply there, present, continuous. The sound of 10,000 leaves dancing in a rhythm they learned from the wind. Perhaps you might imagine that whisper now. Not sharp, not sudden, just the softest breath of sound. As if the trees were sighing in their sleep. And in that sigh, the forest says what forests have always said. Come, sit down. There is shade here. There is rest here. There is time. Bird migration follows the same flyways year after year, century after century. Every autumn, billions of birds take to the sky and fly south. And they do not fly randomly. They follow specific routes called flyways that have been used by their species for thousands, perhaps millions, of years. The Atlantic Flyway, the Pacific Flyway, the East Asian Australasian Flyway. These are ancient highways of the sky, mapped not by cartographers, but by generations upon generations of birds following the same stars, the same coastlines, the same magnetic fields. Researchers tracking bar-tailed godwits found that individual birds fly from Alaska to New Zealand, a journey of over 7,000 miles without stopping. And they follow almost exactly the same path every year. The rhythm of migration is written not in the land, but in the genes. Imagine standing on a hilltop in autumn, watching a flock of geese pass overhead in their classic V formation. They know where they are going. They have always known. Their grandparents flew this same path. Their great-grandparents before them. The route is older than any map, any road, any city below. Perhaps you might notice a sense of direction in yourself right now. Not a place you need to go, but a place you are already heading. Toward rest, toward sleep, along a path that your body has traveled many times before. And on that path, you are not alone. Billions of creatures are making the same journey tonight, following the same ancient rhythm, heading home. The phases of the moon cycle every 29.5 days with perfect regularity. New moon, waxing crescent. First quarter, waxing gibbous. Full moon, waning gibbous. Last quarter, waning crescent, and then new moon again. This cycle has repeated without interruption for 4.5 billion years. Since the moon first formed from the debris of a cosmic collision with the young Earth. The lunar cycle is so reliable that it became the basis for the earliest human calendars. The word month itself derives from the word moon. Ancient cultures from Babylon to China to the Maya independently developed lunar calendars, all tracking the same 29.5-day rhythm. The moon does not hurry. The moon does not pause. It simply continues its slow, silent orbit, changing its face a little each night. Imagine watching the moon over the course of a month. Each night, it is slightly different, a little fuller, a little thinner, a little brighter, a little dimmer. But the change is so gradual that you cannot see it happening. You can only notice it after it has already occurred. The moon changes the way sleep arrives. Slowly, invisibly, until suddenly it is there. Perhaps you might notice something changing in you right now. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just a slow, gradual shift. from wakefulness towards something softer. And in that shift, the moon rises quietly. Not in the sky, but in the quiet spaces behind your eyes, casting its gentle, borrowed light over the landscape of your thoughts. Tree rings record a rhythm of growth that stretches back thousands of years. Every year, a tree adds one ring to its trunk, a light band of rapid growth in spring and summer, and a dark band of slow growth in autumn and winter. By counting these rings, scientists can determine the age of a tree with precision. The oldest known living tree, a bristlecone pine named Methuselah, has 4,856 rings, meaning it began growing before the Egyptian pyramids were built. Dendrochronologists, scientists who study tree rings, have used overlapping ring patterns from living and fossil trees to build continuous records of growth, stretching back over 12,000 years. These records reveal not only the age of the trees, but also the climate of each year. Wet years produce wide rings. Dry years produce narrow ones. The rhythm of the seasons is literally written in wood. Imagine cutting through the trunk of an ancient tree and reading its history like a book. Each ring is a chapter. Each chapter is a year of rain, a year of drought, a year of fire, a year of peace. The tree did not choose these years. It simply grew through them, one ring at a time, adding its quiet record to the rhythm of the earth. Perhaps you might imagine your own life as a series of rings, each year adding a layer. Each layer a little different, but the pattern continues. Growth, rest, growth, rest. The same rhythm the trees have followed since before there were forests. And in that rhythm, the tree stands still. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening exactly as it should. Coral spawning occurs once a year, triggered by the full moon and the temperature of the sea. On certain nights in late spring, after the full moon, when the water temperature reaches precisely the right degree, something extraordinary happens on coral reefs around the world. Billions of tiny coral polyps simultaneously release their eggs and sperm into the water in an event so synchronized that it looks like an underwater snowstorm. The entire reef reproduces at the same moment. Marine biologists at James Cook University have studied this phenomenon for decades and found that the timing is controlled by a combination of lunar light cycles, water temperature, and chemical signaling between polyps. Each individual coral is responding to the same environmental cues, and the result is a collective rhythm of astonishing precision, a once-a-year pulse of life that depends on the predictability of the moon and the sea. Imagine diving beneath the surface on one of these nights. The water is warm and dark, and then, as if on a signal, the reef begins to glow with clouds of tiny, drifting particles, billions of futures, released into the current, trusting the rhythm of the ocean to carry them where they need to go. Perhaps you might notice a sense of trust in your own body right now. Not trust in any particular thing, just the feeling of being carried, of letting something larger than yourself determine the rhythm. And in that trust, the coral releases its offering into the dark water, knowing nothing about where it will go, knowing only that the rhythm has never failed. Hibernation is a seasonal rhythm that slows the body to the edge of stillness. When a ground squirrel enters hibernation, its heart rate drops from 200 beats per minute to approximately 5. Its body temperature falls to just above freezing. Its breathing slows to one breath every few minutes. By every measurable standard, the animal is barely alive, and yet it is not dying. It is resting. It is following a rhythm that its ancestors have followed for millions of years. Researchers at the University of Alaska found that the hormonal signals triggering hibernation are remarkably similar across species, from ground squirrels to bears to certain species of lemurs. The rhythm is ancient and deeply conserved. When winter comes, when the days shorten, when the temperature drops, the body knows what to do. It does not need to be told. It simply slows. Imagine a small animal curled in a burrow deep beneath the frozen earth. Above, the wind howls and the snow falls. Below, everything is dark and still and warm. The heartbeat is so slow you might miss it. The breathing is so shallow you might not see it. But life is there, quiet, patient, waiting for the rhythm of the seasons to bring the warmth back. Perhaps you might allow yourself to slow down, not as far as hibernation, but just a little, letting the heart settle, letting the breath lengthen, letting the body find its own version of winter rest. And in that slowing, something ancient whispers. This is how the earth rests. This is how the animals rest. This is how you were always meant to rest. Snowflakes form in hexagonal patterns because of the molecular geometry of water. Every snowflake is a six-sided crystal, and every branch of that crystal grows according to the same physical laws. The hydrogen bonds in water molecules naturally arrange themselves at angles of 120 degrees. This is why all snowflakes are hexagonal. Not by design, not by intention, but because the geometry of water itself contains a built-in pattern. Physicist Kenneth Librecht at Caltech has spent decades photographing individual snowflakes and cataloging their forms. No two are exactly alike. Each crystal's growth is influenced by the unique sequence of temperature and humidity it encounters as it falls, and yet all of them share the same fundamental six-fold symmetry. The variation is infinite. The underlying pattern is always the same. Imagine watching a single snowflake form. High in the atmosphere, a tiny speck of dust becomes a seed. Water vapor freezes onto it, one molecule at a time, each one clicking into place at precisely the angle that physics demands. Branch by branch, facet by facet, the crystal grows intricate, unique, and yet obeying the same simple rule over and over and over again. Perhaps you might let that idea settle, that even the most complex and beautiful patterns in nature are built from the simplest of repetitions. One rule, applied again and again, until something extraordinary emerges. And in that emergence, the snowflake drifts, not falling so much as floating, not hurrying so much as arriving. One quiet crystal among billions, each one unique, each one following the same ancient pattern. Old Faithful erupts approximately every 90 minutes because of the predictable cycling of underground water. In Yellowstone National Park, the geyser, known as Old Faithful, has been erupting at roughly regular intervals for at least the past 200 years of recorded observation. The cycle is simple. Water seeps into an underground chamber, is heated by volcanic rock to superheated temperatures, builds pressure, erupts in a column of steam and water up to 180 feet high, and then the cycle begins again. Geologists at the United States Geological Survey have found that Old Faithful's interval varies between about 60 and 110 minutes, depending on the duration of the previous eruption. Longer eruptions are followed by longer intervals. Shorter eruptions by shorter intervals, a self-regulating rhythm governed by the simple physics of heat and pressure. Imagine sitting on a bench near the geyser, waiting. The ground is quiet. Steam drifts lazily from the vent. Minutes pass, and then a rumble, a surge, and a tower of white water and steam explodes into the sky, catching the sunlight, hanging for a moment, and then falling gently back to earth. And then, quiet again. The cycle begins anew. Perhaps you might notice the rhythm of your own energy right now, the way it builds and releases. Builds and releases, not in eruptions, but in gentle waves of wakefulness and drowsiness. And in that rhythm, the earth breathes beneath you. Patient, warm, cyclic, building toward nothing more dramatic than the next gentle release. The aurora borealis follows an 11-year cycle tied to the rhythm of the sun. The northern lights are not random. They are driven by the solar wind, a stream of charged particles flowing from the sun, and the intensity of the solar wind follows an 11-year cycle of solar activity. During solar maximum, the sun's magnetic field is most active, producing more sunspots, more solar flares, and more spectacular auroral displays on Earth. Scientists at NASA have tracked this solar cycle since 1855 and found that it repeats with remarkable consistency. The sun breathes on an 11-year rhythm, and the northern lights dance in time with that breath brightening and fading, advancing and retreating, following a pattern written 93 million miles away. Imagine standing in a field in Iceland on a clear winter night. The sky is black and filled with stars. And then, along the northern horizon, a curtain of green light begins to shimmer. It moves slowly, rippling like silk in a breeze that only it can feel. It brightens. It fades. It shifts from green to purple to white. And then, slowly, it dissolves, not disappearing, but returning to its source, waiting for the sun to breathe again. Perhaps you might imagine the light behind your closed eyelids as a private aurora. Subtle, shifting, not quite visible, but not quite invisible either. A gentle display of color and light, produced by the electricity of your own resting mind. And in that display, the sun sends its quiet message across 93 million miles of space. Even stars have rhythms. Even light dances in patterns. Even the sky knows how to rest. The Earth's tectonic plates move at the same speed your fingernails grow. The surface of the Earth is not still. It is made of enormous plates of rock that drift slowly across the planet's surface, driven by convection currents in the molten mantle below. The speed of this movement is approximately 2 to 5 centimeters per year, roughly the same rate at which a human fingernail grows. Geophysicists using GPS measurements have confirmed that this movement is astonishingly steady. The plates do not lurch. They do not stop and start. They simply drift, millimeter by millimeter, year by year, century by century, over millions of years. This imperceptible motion has opened and closed oceans, built and eroded mountain ranges, and rearranged the continents from a single landmass into the familiar map we know today. Imagine watching the Earth from space, but with time compressed so that 1,000,000 years passes in a minute. You would see the continents sliding across the surface like leaves on a pond slowly, gracefully, following paths determined by forces deep beneath the surface. Nothing about this movement is dramatic. Everything about it is relentless. Perhaps you might notice the stillness of your own body right now. You are not moving, and yet, the ground beneath you is slowly, imperceptibly, carrying you along on a journey that began 4 billion years ago. And in that movement so slow it feels like stillness, the earth reminds you that the deepest rhythms are the ones you cannot feel. The ones that carry you without your knowing. The ones that never stop. Flowers open and close on a daily rhythm so reliable that Linnaeus designed a clock from them. In 1751, the Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus proposed a remarkable idea, a garden planted in a circle, with each section containing flowers that open at a different hour of the day. Morning glories would open at 6, dandelions at 7, daisies at 8, evening primroses at dusk. By observing which flowers were open, you could tell the time to within about half an hour. Modern botanists have confirmed that many flowers do indeed follow circadian rhythms of opening and closing, driven by internal biological clocks that respond to light and temperature. The rhythm is so consistent that even flowers grown in constant darkness will continue to open and close at roughly the same times for several days, evidence that the pattern is truly internal, not merely a reaction to external conditions. Imagine that garden, planted in a perfect circle. As the sun moves across the sky, the flowers open one section at a time, like the hands of a living clock, white in the morning, yellow at noon, blue in the afternoon, deep red at dusk, and then, one by one, they close, folding their petals inward, sealing in their scent, settling down for the night. Perhaps you might imagine yourself as one of those evening flowers. The day is ending, the light is fading, and something in you, something quiet and certain, knows that it is time to close. Not because you must, but because the rhythm says so. And in that closing, the petals fold gently, softly, one by one, until the flower is a small, quiet bud again, resting in the dark, trusting the light to return. The waggle dance of honeybees communicates distance and direction through rhythmic movement. When a forager bee returns to the hive after finding a source of nectar, it performs a remarkable dance on the surface of the honeycomb. The bee walks in a figure-8 pattern, waggling its abdomen during the straight section in the middle. The angle of the waggle relative to vertical indicates the direction of the food source relative to the sun. The duration of the waggle indicates the distance. The entire message is encoded in rhythm and movement. Professor Carl von Frisch discovered this communication system in 1967 and received the Nobel Prize for his work. Subsequent research has shown that the dance is extraordinarily precise. Bees can communicate the location of a food source more than 6 miles away with an accuracy of a few degrees. The rhythm of the waggle, its duration, its speed, its repetition is the language. Imagine a tiny creature, no larger than a fingertip, standing on a wax surface in the dark, dancing. Its audience of sister bees presses close, feeling the vibrations through their feet. The dancer repeats the pattern: waggle, turn, waggle, turn, and the message is received. Within minutes, dozens of bees are flying in the exact right direction, toward a flower patch they have never seen, guided only by the rhythm of a dance. Perhaps you might notice the quiet vibrations in your own body, the subtle pulse of blood, the micro movements of muscle, the gentle sway that even a still body makes. Your body is always dancing, always communicating, always repeating its quiet rhythms. And in those rhythms, a message is being sent. Not to anyone else, but to yourself. A gentle, waggling signal that says, this way, toward rest. Starling murmurations create breathtaking patterns by each bird following 3 simple rules. When thousands of starlings gather at dusk, they create one of nature's most mesmerizing spectacles, a murmuration. The flock moves as a single, fluid entity, swooping and swirling across the sky in patterns that seem choreographed by an invisible conductor. But there is no conductor, there is no leader. Each bird follows 3 simple rules. Stay close to your neighbors, match their speed, and avoid collisions. Physicists at the University of Rome analyzed high-speed video of murmurations and found that each starling tracks only its 7 nearest neighbors. From these 7 simple connections, repeated thousands of times, the entire flock generates patterns of staggering beauty and complexity. The phenomenon is another example of emergent behavior, vast order arising from tiny, repeated interactions. Imagine watching a murmuration at sunset. The sky is orange and pink, and against it, a cloud of birds flows and shifts and pulses like a living thing, now stretching into a ribbon, now condensing into a sphere, now splitting and merging and splitting again. No plan, no rehearsal, just thousands of tiny heartbeats, each one following the same simple rhythm. Perhaps you might let your thoughts move like starlings, not directing them, not organizing them, just letting each thought follow the one nearest to it, matching its speed, keeping its distance, flowing naturally from one to the next. And in that flow, the mind becomes a murmuration. Not still, but graceful. Not empty, but unified. Thousands of small movements merging into one beautiful, descending arc. Salmon return to the exact stream where they were born, following a chemical memory encoded years earlier. After spending 2 to 5 years in the open ocean, Pacific salmon swim back to the precise freshwater stream where they hatched, sometimes traveling over 900 miles, navigating by the Earth's magnetic field for the open ocean portion, and then switching to olfactory memory for the final approach. They literally smell their way home, recognizing the unique chemical signature of their birth stream that was imprinted in their brains as juveniles. Researchers at the University of Washington found that salmon can detect their home stream's chemical signature at concentrations as low as 1 part per billion. The precision of this homing instinct is remarkable. Studies show that over 90% of salmon return to within a few hundred meters of their birthplace. The rhythm of departure and return is written into their biology. Imagine a fish in the vast Pacific Ocean. It has been swimming for years, covering thousands of miles. And then, one day, something shifts. A faint chemical whisper in the water. A memory of cold, clean stone, of dappled light through alders, of the exact smell of home, and the fish turns and begins to swim against the current, up the rivers, over the rapids following a scent that has been waiting in its brain since the day it was born. Perhaps you might notice a sense of return in yourself right now, the feeling of coming back to something familiar, your bed, your pillow, your own quiet room, the place where you have always rested. And in that return, the salmon's journey ends. Not with exhaustion, but with recognition. The quiet certainty that this is the place. This has always been the place. Desert wildflowers bloom in a rhythm determined by years of patient waiting for rain. In the deserts of the American Southwest, of the Atacama in Chile, and of the Namaqualand region of South Africa, the soil holds seeds that have been waiting sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, for precisely the right conditions to germinate. When the rains finally come in sufficient quantity and at the right time of year, the desert explodes into color. Millions of flowers bloom simultaneously, covering the barren landscape in carpets of gold and purple and white. Botanists at Arizona State University have found that desert wildflower seeds contain chemical inhibitors that prevent germination until they have been washed away by a specific amount of rainfall. The seeds are not merely waiting for water. They are measuring it. They are counting. They bloom only when the rhythm of rain tells them it is safe. Imagine a desert that has been dry for 5 years. The earth is cracked and brown. Nothing seems alive. And then the rain comes steady, soaking, generous, and within a week, the desert is transformed. Flowers you did not know were there rise from the dust as if by magic. But it is not magic. It is patience. It is rhythm. It is life, waiting for its cue. Perhaps you might think of sleep that way, not as something you force, not as something you chase, but as something that blooms when the conditions are right, when the body is warm, when the mind is quiet, when the rhythm of rest has been met. And perhaps, right now, the conditions are becoming right. The rain is falling gently on the desert of your mind. And somewhere beneath the surface, something is preparing to bloom. The cosmic microwave background radiation is the faint, rhythmic echo of the universe's birth. In every direction you look up, down, north, south, east, west, the universe is glowing, not with visible light, but with microwave radiation left over from the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. This radiation, called the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, has been traveling through space since the universe was only 380,000 years old. It is the oldest light in existence, and it is everywhere. Scientists at NASA, using the Cosmic Background Explorer and later the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, mapped the CMB in extraordinary detail and found that it is remarkably uniform, varying by only about 1 part in 100,000 across the entire sky. This uniformity is itself a kind of rhythm, a cosmic hum, a faint, steady glow that fills all of space, all of time, with the same quiet signal. Imagine turning off every light in the universe, turning off every star, every galaxy, every lamp, every screen, and in that absolute darkness, you would still see something not with your eyes, but with the right instrument. A faint, warm glow, coming from everywhere at once. The afterglow of creation. The first light, the quietest, oldest, most patient rhythm in existence. Perhaps you might imagine that glow surrounding you now. Not bright, not warm enough to feel, just present. The same faint hum that has filled the universe since the very beginning. You have been bathed in it your entire life. Every living thing that has ever existed has been bathed in it. And in that ancient light, the universe whispers its oldest secret. That everything began with a single moment of energy and has been gently, slowly, patiently settling ever since. Expanding, cooling, softening, drifting toward a quiet that has been 13.8 billion years in the making. Your brain uses predictive coding to feel safe, and repetition is the raw material of prediction. The brain does not passively receive information from the world. It actively predicts what will happen next, and then compares those predictions against incoming data. When the prediction matches reality, the brain relaxes. When it does not, the brain generates a prediction error, a signal that something unexpected has occurred, and attention is needed. Neuroscientist Carl Friston at University College London developed the free energy principle, which proposes that the brain's primary goal is to minimize prediction errors, to make the world as predictable as possible. Repetition is the fastest way to achieve this. When a pattern repeats, the brain learns to predict it, and each successful prediction reduces neural activity, reduces arousal, and moves the system closer to rest. Imagine reading the same sentence over and over. At first, you notice every word. By the 5th repetition, you barely register the meaning. By the 10th, the sentence has become a kind of texture familiar, comfortable, requiring no effort to process. Your brain has built a perfect model, and now it can rest inside that model. Perhaps you might notice that these words have been following a pattern. Fact, explanation, metaphor, relaxation cue, poetic shift, over and over. And perhaps your brain has already learned the pattern and is beginning to rest inside it. And in that resting, the prediction machine grows quiet. Not because the world has stopped, but because the pattern has become so familiar that there is nothing left to predict. Habituation is not a failure of attention. It is a gift your nervous system gives you. When you first put on a shirt, you feel the fabric against your skin. Within minutes, the sensation fades. Not because the shirt has changed, but because your nervous system has determined that the stimulus is safe and can be ignored. This process, called habituation, is one of the most fundamental forms of learning in the animal kingdom. Researchers at Columbia University, led by Nobel laureate Eric Kandel, demonstrated that habituation occurs even in the simplest organisms. The sea slug Aplysia habituates to a gentle touch after just a few repetitions. Its neurons literally reducing the amount of neurotransmitter they release. The mechanism is the same in humans. Repetition tells the nervous system that a stimulus is safe, and the response diminishes accordingly. Imagine the nervous system as a vigilant guard, standing at the gates of consciousness. Every new stimulus is a visitor that must be examined, evaluated, and either admitted or turned away. But when the same visitor arrives again and again, the guard recognizes them and waves them through without inspection. Habituation is the guard learning to relax. Perhaps you might notice the sounds around you right now, not as things to analyze, but as familiar visitors that your guard has already waved through. They are safe. They have been here before. They can pass. And as they pass, the guard sits back down. The gate stands open, and the mind grows quiet behind it. Bedtime routines work because they create a chain of predictable cues that signal approaching sleep. Sleep researchers at the American Academy of Sleep Medicine have found that consistent bedtime routines significantly improve both sleep onset and sleep quality, not just in children, but in adults as well. The routine itself matters less than its consistency. Whether it involves reading, brushing teeth, dimming lights, or drinking tea. The key is that the same sequence of actions occurs in the same order every night. The mechanism is classical conditioning, the same principle Pavlov discovered with his dogs. When a specific sequence of behaviors consistently precedes sleep, the brain begins to associate those behaviors with the physiological changes of sleep onset. The routine becomes a trigger. Each step in the chain sends a signal: sleep is approaching. Melatonin rises. Heart rate drops. The body prepares. Imagine a path through a forest that you walk every evening. The first time, you had to find your way, watching for landmarks, choosing between branches. But after 100 evenings, the path walks itself. Your feet know every route, every turn, every stone. You do not need to think about where you are going. You simply follow the familiar trail, and it leads you, as it always does, to the same quiet clearing. Perhaps you might notice that you are on a path right now, not a physical one, but a sequence of gentle facts, each one following the last, each one carrying you further along a route your mind is beginning to recognize. And at the end of that path, the clearing waits, as it always does. Quiet, dark, and soft. Comfort objects work by providing a portable source of predictable sensory input. A child's blanket, a worn stuffed animal, a familiar pillow. These objects, which psychologists call transitional objects, serve as anchors of predictability in an unpredictable world. The term was coined by pediatrician and psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott in 1953, and decades of research have confirmed their importance. Research at the University of Wisconsin found that the effectiveness of a comfort object is directly related to its sensory consistency, its texture, its smell, its weight. When these sensory properties remain constant, the object provides the brain with a reliable source of prediction-matching stimuli. The brain touches the blanket, predicts its softness, feels its softness, and relaxes. The prediction is confirmed. The world is safe. Imagine holding a stone that you have carried in your pocket for years. You know its weight, its temperature, the smoothness of one side and the roughness of the other. Every time you touch it, it is exactly what you expect. And in that exactness, in the absolute reliability of its familiar surfaces, there is a comfort that no new object can provide. Perhaps you might notice the surface beneath you right now. Your pillow, your blanket, the familiar textures that your body knows by heart. They are the same tonight as they were last night, and they will be the same tomorrow. And in that sameness, the body sighs, not with boredom, but with relief. The deep, quiet relief of something that does not change. Rereading a favorite book activates the brain's reward system differently than reading something new. When you reread a book you love, you are not seeking new information. You are seeking the pleasure of recognition, the satisfaction of knowing what comes next, and finding that it comes exactly as you remembered. Researchers at the University of Virginia found that rereading activates the brain's default mode network and reward circuitry simultaneously, a combination associated with both relaxation and gentle pleasure. The phenomenon is related to what psychologists call the mere exposure effect, the tendency to develop a preference for things simply because they are familiar. Each rereading deepens the familiarity, strengthens the neural pathways, and increases the sense of comfort. The story becomes less a narrative and more a landscape, a place you know, a place you trust, a place you can rest in. Imagine opening a book you have read many times. The words are old friends. The sentences are familiar paths. You do not read them for surprise. You read them for the gentle pleasure of returning to a place you have been before, a place where every word is exactly where you left it. Perhaps you might think of these facts in the same way, not as information to absorb, but as a familiar rhythm to rest inside of. The pattern repeating, the words arriving in their gentle, expected order. And in that return, the mind settles into the story, the way a body settles into a favorite chair. Not because it is new, but because it is known. Familiar scents can trigger deep relaxation because smell is the most direct pathway to memory. The olfactory bulb, the brain structure that processes smell, is directly connected to the hippocampus and amygdala, the regions responsible for memory and emotion. No other sense has such a direct neural pathway. This is why a single scent can instantly transport you to a specific time and place, a phenomenon Marcel Proust described so memorably that psychologists now call it the Proustian memory effect. Researchers at the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Foundation found that familiar, pleasant scents, particularly lavender, vanilla, and chamomile, significantly reduced anxiety and improved sleep quality. The key word is familiar. A novel scent, even a pleasant one, does not have the same effect. It is the recognition, the prediction confirmed, that generates the calm. Imagine walking into a room and catching a scent that takes you back to childhood. Clean laundry, fresh bread, pine trees after rain. The memory arrives before the thought. The emotion arrives before the analysis. Your body relaxes before your mind even knows why. Perhaps you might imagine a scent that makes you feel safe, not thinking about it analytically, just letting the ghost of that fragrance drift across your memory. And in that drifting, the oldest part of your brain whispers, "I know this place. I have been here before. It is safe here. It has always been safe here." The lullabies your parents sang to you may still affect your nervous system decades later. Research at the University of Montreal found that adults who were sung to as children showed stronger physiological relaxation responses when exposed to lullaby-like music, even lullabies they did not consciously remember hearing. The neural pathways formed in infancy, when the brain was most plastic, appear to persist into adulthood, creating a lifelong sensitivity to the rhythmic patterns of soothing song. Developmental psychologists call this implicit procedural memory knowledge the body holds, even when the conscious mind has forgotten. The lullaby does not need to be remembered to be effective. Its pattern was encoded at a level deeper than conscious recall. In the brainstem, in the autonomic nervous system, in the ancient circuits that govern arousal and calm. Imagine a river that flowed through a valley millions of years ago. The river has long since dried up, but the valley remains carved into the landscape, shaping the flow of every rainfall that follows. The lullabies of your infancy are like that river. The songs may have ended, but the valleys they carved in your brain still guide the flow of calm. Perhaps you might notice that you do not need to remember a specific lullaby. The feeling is enough. The sense of being held, the warmth of a voice, the steady rhythm of someone who loved you, singing you to sleep. And in that feeling, the valley fills again. Not with water, but with peace. A peace that was planted in you before you had words for it. Humans have been staring into fire for at least 400,000 years, and the flickering light induces a meditative state. Archaeological evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggests that early humans were using controlled fire at least 400,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. For most of human history, firelight was the only source of light after dark, and our ancestors spent their evenings gathered around flames, watching the dance of light and shadow. Researchers at the University of Alabama found that watching a flickering fire significantly reduced blood pressure and induced a state of calm that deepened the longer participants watched. The irregular but rhythmic pattern of firelight, technically a form of 1/F noise, appears to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Our brains may be evolutionarily tuned to find firelight calming, having spent hundreds of thousands of years associating it with safety, warmth, and community. Imagine a campfire on a quiet night. The flames rise and fall, twist and sway, in patterns that are never quite the same and never quite different. The light plays across the faces of the people around you. The warmth touches your skin, and you find yourself staring not at anything in particular, but at the fire itself, mesmerized by a dance that has been performed since the first spark. Perhaps you might imagine that gentle, flickering light behind your closed eyelids. Not bright, not harsh, just the soft, warm pulse of something ancient and familiar. And in that pulse, the fire watcher in you settles by the flames, as your ancestors did, night after night, for 1,000 generations, watching the oldest show on Earth, and slowly, gently, drifting off. Prayer beads exist in virtually every major religion because the fingers need a rhythm too. Catholic rosaries, Islamic misbah, Buddhist mala, Hindu japa mala, Baha'i prayer beads, across the world's spiritual traditions. The practice of counting repetitions on a string of beads is remarkably consistent. The number of beads varies. The prayers vary. But the physical act is the same. The fingers move from bead to bead in a steady, rhythmic progression, one repetition at a time. Neuroscientists have found that repetitive fine motor movements activate the cerebellum and reduce activity in the prefrontal cortex, effectively quieting the brain's executive functions and allowing a more meditative state to emerge. The beads give the hands something to do that is predictable, rhythmic, and requires just enough attention to prevent mind wandering without demanding conscious thought. Imagine holding a string of smooth, worn beads. Each one is slightly warm from your touch. Your thumb moves to the next bead, and the next, and the next. The motion is so simple, so repetitive, that after a few minutes, you stop thinking about the beads entirely. Your hands know the pattern, your fingers know the rhythm, and your mind is free to settle. Perhaps you might notice the weight of your hands right now. Not heavy, just present, resting where they are, each finger soft, each joint relaxed. And in that rest, the fingers have found their final bead. The counting is done. The prayer is complete. And the hands lie still. The repetitive motion of knitting has been shown to reduce anxiety and induce a meditative state. Knitting involves a continuous loop of identical movements: insert needle, wrap yarn, pull through, slip stitch, repeated hundreds or thousands of times to create a single piece of fabric. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found that this repetitive motion activates the parasympathetic nervous system and produces measurable reductions in heart rate, cortisol, and self-reported anxiety. The therapeutic benefit of knitting is so well documented that some hospitals now offer it as a complementary therapy for patients with chronic pain and anxiety disorders. A survey of over 3,000 knitters published in the British Journal of Occupational Therapy found that 81% reported feeling happier after knitting, and over half said it helped them manage stress and anxiety. The rhythm of the needles creates a form of moving meditation. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, needles clicking softly, yarn sliding through your fingers in a steady, unbroken rhythm. Stitch after stitch after stitch, the fabric grows slowly beneath your hands. You are not thinking about the stitches. You are not counting them. You are simply moving rhythmically, predictably, peacefully, and with each repetition, the world grows a little softer. Perhaps you might notice a sense of softness in your hands right now, as if the yarn was still there, as if the needles were still clicking, as if the rhythm were continuing, even in stillness. And in that stillness, something is still being woven. Not fabric, but calm. One soft, repetitive stitch at a time. Seasonal rituals give humans a way to mark the passage of time with predictable celebrations. Every culture has them: harvest festivals, solstice ceremonies, New Year celebrations, spring planting rituals. These events mark the same points in the annual cycle, year after year, generation after generation. And researchers have found that their predictability is itself a source of psychological well-being. Psychologists at the University of Toronto found that people who regularly participate in seasonal rituals report higher levels of life satisfaction, stronger social bonds, and lower levels of anxiety. The rituals provide temporal landmarks, predictable points in the flow of time that help people organize their experience and feel a sense of continuity. The world is always changing, but the rituals return. And in their return, they say the pattern holds. Imagine the same family gathered around the same table, for the same meal, at the same time of year. The dishes are familiar. The conversations are familiar. Even the arguments are familiar. Nothing about this gathering is new. And that is precisely why it feels so right. Because in a world of constant change, the ritual is the one thing that stays the same. Perhaps you might think of sleep itself as a seasonal ritual, something your body has celebrated every night for as long as you have been alive. The same sequence, the same settling, the same gentle descent into darkness. And tonight, the ritual continues. As it always has. As it always will. The Japanese tea ceremony is a meditation on repetition, where every movement follows a precise, unchanging pattern. The traditional Japanese tea ceremony, or chanoyu, is one of the most refined examples of ritual repetition in human culture. Every movement, from the way the tea bowl is held to the number of times the whisk is rotated, follows a precise choreography that has been practiced, unchanged, for over 400 years. Researchers at Kyoto University found that participants in the tea ceremony showed significant increases in alpha brainwave activity, the same frequency associated with relaxed wakefulness and the transition to sleep. The researchers attributed this to the combination of repetitive motor movements, aesthetic simplicity, and the absence of novel stimuli. The ceremony creates a pocket of perfect predictability in an unpredictable world. Imagine a small room, tatami mats, a single flower in a vase, a kettle steaming softly. The host lifts the bamboo whisk, dips it into the bowl, and begins to whisk the tea, always the same motion, always the same speed, always the same number of rotations. The sound is like a whisper, the motion is like breathing, and in the simplicity of it all, the mind grows very, very still. Perhaps you might imagine the simplicity of this moment. You, this voice, these words, nothing more is needed, nothing more is expected. And in that simplicity, the tea is poured. The cup is warm. The ceremony is nearly complete. Walking meditation uses the repetitive rhythm of footsteps to anchor the mind in the present moment. In Buddhist tradition, walking meditation, or kinhin, is practiced by walking slowly in a circle or along a straight path, paying careful attention to each step. The rhythm is deliberate lift, move, place, lift, move, place. The same three motions, repeated over and over, until the mind stops wandering and settles into the rhythm of the feet. Research at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand found that walking meditation reduced depression and improved cardiovascular function as effectively as traditional walking exercise, while also providing the stress reduction benefits of seated meditation. The rhythmic nature of the footsteps serves as a physical mantra, something predictable and repetitive for the mind to follow. Imagine a monk walking slowly along a stone path in the early morning. Each step is placed with care. Each foot meets the ground as if greeting an old friend. The pace is so slow that it barely qualifies as movement. And yet, with each step, the mind grows quieter, clearer, more present, not because the walking is going anywhere, but because the rhythm itself is the destination. Perhaps you might notice the stillness of your feet right now. They are not walking, they are resting, but the rhythm they know, the ancient, patient rhythm of step after step, is still there, sleeping in the muscles, waiting for morning. And in that waiting, the feet are at peace. Having walked far enough for one day, having arrived exactly where they need to be. The act of tending a garden follows the rhythm of the seasons and teaches patience through repetition. Gardening is one of the oldest forms of rhythmic human activity. Plant, water, wait, weed, harvest, rest. The cycle repeats every year. And every year it teaches the same lesson: growth cannot be rushed. And patience is not passive, it is the most active form of trust. Horticultural therapy research at Rutgers University found that regular gardening significantly reduced cortisol levels and symptoms of depression. The researchers attributed this partly to the physical activity, partly to the exposure to nature, and partly to the deeply rhythmic nature of garden work, the same tasks, in the same order, season after season, year after year. Imagine kneeling in soft earth, pressing a seed into the soil, covering it gently, and watering it. You do not know exactly when it will sprout. You cannot make it grow faster. All you can do is tend to it consistently, patiently, rhythmically, and trust that the pattern of growth will unfold as it always has. Perhaps you might think of tonight as a planting. You are placing yourself in the soil of sleep, covering yourself with warmth, watering yourself with stillness, and trusting that rest will grow, as it always does, in its own gentle time. And in that trust, the gardener rests, knowing that the seeds are planted, knowing that the earth will do its work, knowing that morning will bring green. Stargazing is a form of repetitive visual meditation that humans have practiced for tens of thousands of years. The same constellations that you see tonight were seen by the first humans who looked up. Orion, the Pleiades, the Southern Cross. These patterns have not changed in recorded human history, and they will not change for thousands of years to come. The stars are the most permanent, most predictable, most patient objects in the human visual field. Research at the University of California, Irvine, found that experiences of awe, such as those produced by stargazing, significantly reduced markers of chronic inflammation and promoted feelings of calm and perspective. The researchers suggested that the vastness of the night sky triggers a perceptual shift that reduces self-focused thinking and promotes a sense of connection to something larger. Imagine lying on your back on a warm night, looking up. The sky is a black canvas scattered with points of light, some bright, some dim, some twinkling, some steady. You do not need to name them. You do not need to count them. You simply look, and in looking, something in you expands, not with effort, but with release. The smallness of your concerns, the vastness of the sky, the ancient, patient light. Perhaps you might imagine that you can see the stars right now, not with your eyes, but with the part of your mind that remembers looking up, the part that knows how it feels to be small beneath something infinite. And in that smallness, there is no burden, no weight, no worry large enough to fill that sky. The 4-7-8 breathing technique uses repetitive counting to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Dr. Andrew Weil developed the 4-7-8 technique as a simple, repeatable breathing exercise. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts. Hold for 7 counts. Exhale through the mouth for 8 counts. The extended exhale activates the vagus nerve, and the counting provides a repetitive, predictable focus that prevents the mind from wandering to anxious thoughts. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology found that structured breathing techniques with repetitive patterns significantly reduced anxiety and improved sleep onset in participants with insomnia. The researchers noted that the repetitive counting serves a dual purpose. It regulates the breath and occupies the cognitive resources that would otherwise be used for worry. Imagine your breath as a wave that you are shaping with numbers. 4 counts and the wave rises. 7 counts held, the wave pauses at its peak. 8 counts out, the wave slides gently back to shore. And then again, and again. Each wave exactly like the last. Each repetition a little deeper, a little slower, a little more like sleep. Perhaps you might let your breath find its own gentle count right now, not forcing it, not timing it precisely, just allowing the exhale to be a little longer than the inhale. That is enough. And in that gentle count, the waves continue, one after another, each one carrying you a little further from the shore of wakefulness, a little closer to the deep, still water of sleep. The practice of counting sheep originated as a repetitive mental task designed to bore the mind into sleep. The tradition of counting sheep to fall asleep dates back at least to the 12th century, when shepherds in medieval England would count their flocks before bed to ensure none had been lost. Over time, the practice became a folk remedy for insomnia, not because sheep are inherently soporific, but because the act of counting provides the mind with a monotonous, repetitive task that gradually reduces cognitive arousal. Researchers at Oxford University tested the effectiveness of counting sheep against other pre-sleep mental strategies and found that it was less effective than guided imagery, but the principle behind it was sound. Any repetitive mental task that is sufficiently boring and predictable can help the brain disengage from anxious rumination. The key is monotony. The key is repetition. The key is giving the mind something to do that requires just enough attention to prevent worry, but not enough to maintain wakefulness. Imagine a field at twilight, a wooden fence, and one by one, the sheep jump over each one identical, each one unhurried, each one landing softly on the other side. 1, 2, 3. The count does not matter. The sheep do not matter. What matters is the rhythm, the steady, predictable, endlessly repeating image of something gentle moving through your mind. Perhaps you do not need to count anything right now. The facts themselves have been your sheep one after another, jumping gently over the fence of your attention, landing softly, moving on. And as they pass, the field grows emptier, the fence grows quieter, and the mind grows still. Mantra repetition reduces activity in the default mode network's rumination circuits. When you repeat a word or phrase over and over, whether it is a traditional mantra like Om or a secular word like calm or peace, the repetitive vocalization engages specific neural circuits that compete with the brain's rumination networks. Research at the University of Linköping in Sweden found that mantra repetition significantly reduced activity in the posterior cingulate cortex, the region most associated with self-referential thinking and worry. The mechanism is elegantly simple. The brain has limited attentional resources. When those resources are occupied by a repetitive, predictable task, like repeating a single word, there are fewer resources available for the circular, anxious thinking that keeps people awake. The mantra does not solve your problems. It simply fills the space where the problems used to echo. Imagine a room with a persistent echo. Every sound bounces off the walls and returns to you, amplified and distorted. Now imagine filling that room with a single, steady tone, soft, continuous, unchanging. The echo does not disappear, but it is absorbed, softened, overwhelmed by the gentle constancy of the new sound. A mantra does this for the mind. Perhaps you might notice the echo of your own thoughts. Whatever they are, worries, plans, memories, they are just echoes. And right now, these words are filling the room with something softer. And in that softness, the echoes fade. Not silenced, but dissolved, absorbed into the steady, gentle rhythm of a mind, finding its way to quiet. Progressive muscle relaxation uses a repetitive tense and release pattern to teach the body how to let go. Developed by physician Edmund Jacobson in the 1920s, progressive muscle relaxation involves systematically tensing and then releasing each muscle group in the body, working from the toes to the scalp. The technique relies on a simple principle. A muscle that has been deliberately tensed will relax more deeply than one that was never tensed at all. Research at the University of Massachusetts found that progressive muscle relaxation significantly reduced insomnia symptoms in over 70% of participants. The repetitive pattern, tense for 5 seconds, release for 30 seconds, move to the next group, gives the body a rhythmic sequence to follow. And with each release, the nervous system learns a little more about what it feels like to truly let go. Imagine a fist, clenched as tightly as possible. Hold it. Feel the tension in every finger, every tendon, every joint. Now open it. Let the fingers unfold. Feel the warmth flow back into the palm. That release, that sudden, beautiful absence of effort is what progressive relaxation teaches every muscle in your body, one group at a time. Perhaps you might notice one area of your body that is holding tension right now. Your jaw, your shoulders, your forehead. You do not need to tense it first. Simply let it soften, let it melt, let gravity do the work. And as it softens, the body learns what it has always known but sometimes forgets. That letting go is not a loss. It is a return. The body scan meditation moves attention through the body in a slow, repetitive sweep that quiets the mind. In a body scan meditation, attention is directed slowly from one part of the body to the next, typically starting at the toes and moving upward through the legs, hips, abdomen, chest, arms, and head. The practice is inherently repetitive. Notice, breathe, release, notice, breathe, release. Each body part receives the same gentle attention, the same patient focus, the same quiet permission to relax. Research at the University of Oxford found that regular body scan meditation significantly reduced symptoms of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. The researchers suggested that the systematic nature of the practice trains the brain to maintain a narrow, non-judgmental focus, exactly the kind of attention that promotes the transition from wakefulness to sleep. Imagine a warm, golden light moving slowly through your body. It starts at your toes, illuminating them, warming them, then moving on. It rises through your feet, your ankles, your calves. Wherever it touches, the muscles soften. The tension dissolves. The light does not rush. It does not skip ahead. It simply moves, slowly and patiently, from one part of you to the next. Perhaps you might feel that light now, starting somewhere at the edges of your body, moving inward, moving upward, touching each part of you with the same gentle warmth. And as it moves, the body grows heavy, not with exhaustion, but with peace. The deep, settling peace of something that has been thoroughly, lovingly attended to. Neural pathways grow stronger with repetition, and so do the pathways to calm. Every time you practice relaxation, the neural circuits associated with calm grow a little stronger, This is the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on experience. Neurons that fire together wire together. As the neuroscientist Donald Hebb famously observed, and the more often you activate the pathways associated with relaxation, the easier they become to activate again. Researchers at Harvard Medical School found that just 8 weeks of regular meditation practice produced measurable increases in gray matter density in regions associated with self-awareness, compassion, and introspection, and measurable decreases in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. The brain literally restructures itself in response to repeated experience. Calm, practiced often enough, becomes a habit. Imagine a path through tall grass. The first time you walk it, you can barely see where you are going. The grass is thick and resistant. But the second time, the path is a little clearer. The 10th time, the grass is worn down. The 100th time, the path is smooth and wide and easy, not because anyone built a road, but because feet walked there, over and over, until the way was clear. Perhaps you might notice that the path to sleep feels a little easier tonight, not because anything has changed, but because you have walked this path before, many times, and each time it has become a little smoother. And tonight, the path is clear. The grass is soft. The way is open. And your feet know exactly where to go. The comfort of returning home activates deep reward circuits in the brain. Neuroimaging studies at the University of Colorado found that viewing images of one's own home activates the brain's reward circuitry, the nucleus accumbens and ventral tegmental area, in a pattern distinct from viewing images of other familiar places. Home is not just a location. It is a neurological experience, a specific pattern of reward activation associated with safety, familiarity, and the absence of threat. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that this response evolved because returning to a safe, familiar shelter after foraging or hunting was one of the most critical survival behaviors for early humans. The brain rewards the behavior of coming home because, for most of human history, home was the only place where the body could safely rest. Imagine coming home after a very long day. You open the door. The air smells familiar. The light falls in the same pattern it always does. Everything is exactly where you left it. And in that moment, that first breath of home air, something inside you unclenches. Not gradually, immediately, as if the body had been holding itself together, waiting for this signal, waiting for this one familiar place to say, "You are here. You can stop now." Perhaps you might notice that you are already home, already in your bed, already surrounded by the familiar textures and scents and sounds of the place where you rest. And in that recognition, the brain lights up quietly. The same ancient reward, the same ancient message. You are here. You are safe. You can let go. Sleep itself is a rhythm the most essential, the most patient, the most forgiving rhythm of all. Sleep is not an event. It is a cycle. It moves through predictable stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM, sleep in approximately 90-minute cycles that repeat throughout the night. Each cycle is a wave. Each wave carries you through different depths of consciousness, from the shallow shores of drowsiness to the deep ocean floor of slow-wave sleep, and then back again. Sleep researcher Dr. Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, has described sleep as the single most effective thing a human being can do to reset brain and body health. And the most remarkable thing about this rhythm is its forgiveness. Even if you have not slept well for days, even if your mind is restless and your body is tense, the rhythm is always waiting. It does not judge. It does not keep score. It simply offers itself, night after night, with infinite patience. Imagine the tide coming in. It does not ask whether you are ready. It does not wait for permission. It simply rises, as it always does, following the rhythm of the moon. Sleep is like that tide. It has been coming for you every night of your life, and it will continue coming, patient and reliable, for every night that remains. Perhaps you might stop trying to sleep, not because sleep is not coming, but because it does not need your effort. It only needs your permission. And that permission, perhaps, has already been given. In the softness of your breath, in the heaviness of your eyelids, in the gentle, familiar rhythm of a body that knows exactly what to do. You do not need to earn rest. Rest is not a reward. It is a biological right. In a culture that often equates productivity with worth, it can feel as though rest must be justified, that you must work hard enough, accomplish enough, struggle enough before you are allowed to stop. But biology disagrees. Rest is not a reward for effort. It is a fundamental biological process, as essential as breathing, as non-negotiable as heartbeat. Research at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that chronic sleep deprivation produces the same inflammatory markers as chronic stress and physical injury. The body does not distinguish between voluntary sleep deprivation and involuntary harm. It responds to both with alarm. Rest is not optional. Rest is not a luxury. Rest is the mechanism by which the body repairs itself, consolidates memory, regulates emotion, and restores the immune system. Imagine telling your heart that it needs to earn its next beat, that it must prove its worth before it is allowed to continue pumping. The idea is absurd, and yet, many people apply this same impossible standard to sleep. But your body knows better. Your body has always known better. Perhaps you might give yourself permission right now. Not permission to do anything. Permission to stop doing. Permission to be still. Permission to receive the rest that your body has been preparing for you all day. And in that permission, the weight lifts. Not the weight of the blankets, but the weight of the expectation. The quiet, gentle liberation of knowing that you do not need to do anything more. This moment right now is the gentlest repetition of all. You have been here before, not in this exact moment, but in this exact posture of rest, lying down, eyes closed, or closing, body warm, mind drifting. You have done this thousands of times, and each time, the pattern has carried you to the same quiet place. There is no science to cite for this final fact. No study, no journal, just the simple observation that everything you have heard tonight, every rhythm, every pattern, every gentle repetition has been leading here, to this moment, to this breath, to the soft, familiar feeling of a body that is ready to let go. Imagine all 100 facts as a single, continuous thread. A thread that began with the rhythm of your own heartbeat and wound its way through lullabies and ocean waves, through fireflies and snowflakes, through prayer beads and starlight, through the cosmic background radiation of the universe itself. All of it, every rhythm, every pattern has been saying the same thing, in 100 different ways. You are safe. The pattern holds. You can rest. Perhaps you already are. And if so, then let the final repetition be the simplest one of all. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, and let the rhythm carry you, where it has always carried you, to the quietest, softest, most familiar place you know. And so the pattern completes itself, not with a summary, not with a lesson, but with a recognition that you have been listening to the same story, told 100 different ways. The story of repetition, the story of rhythm, the story of a universe that has been gently, patiently, settling since the moment it began. Your brain is a pattern-seeking machine, and tonight, it found what it was looking for. Not excitement, not novelty, not the sharp thrill of surprise, but the deep, ancient comfort of a rhythm it could trust, a pattern it could predict, a signal, repeated over and over, that said the same thing every time. You are safe. You can stop searching. You can rest. The heartbeat you heard at the beginning is still beating. The waves are still arriving at the shore. The stars are still turning in their ancient, patient arcs. The cosmic background radiation is still humming its quiet, 13.8 billion-year-old song. Nothing has changed. Nothing needs to change. The rhythm holds. So let your shoulders drop, if they have not already. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands lie open. Let the weight of the day dissolve into the pillow beneath your head. You do not need to remember any of this in the morning. You do not need to remember the facts, or the studies, or the numbers. Your body has already absorbed what it needed, not the information, but the rhythm, not the knowledge, but the pattern, not the words, but the gentle, repetitive cadence of a voice that asked nothing of you except that you listen. And now, even that is no longer required. The voice can fade. The words can dissolve. The pattern can continue on its own in the beat of your heart, in the rise and fall of your chest, in the slow turning of the earth beneath you. May your dreams be gentle. May they move in patterns you recognize. May they carry you softly through the night. And may you wake when the rhythm says it is time, rested and whole and ready for the morning light. Good night.